I can start?
Yes.
Okay, so because there was no YouTube recording, we have to start over again. So I'm going to read the remarks from the panel. Chair. Good morning. During the declared emergency in the City of Toronto, Committee of Adjustment virtual public hearings are being conducted by electronic means through WebEx, an online digital platform, and streamed on the Toronto City Planning YouTube channel. These measures are necessary to comply with physical distancing requirements and a provincial order that limits attendance at public gatherings. This will be a virtual public hearing, and participants who have registered in advance will be able to make their presentations to the committee using WebEx, an online event that is being moderated by city staff. Anyone wishing to view the hearing may do so by watching on YouTube. Participants who have registered in advance will be connecting either by their computer, a phone or tablet app, or by telephone. All participants will automatically be muted on entry. When your item is called, each participant will be unmuted by the moderator, one person at a time. Only the committee members will be participating by video. Any registered participants will be participating by audio only. We ask that you also mute your devices until you are called on to speak. We acknowledge the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. In accordance with sections 45 and 53 of the Planning Act, this meeting of the Committee of Adjustments of the City of Toronto is called to order. The committee considers applications for variances from the provisions of the zoning bylaw that applies to property, permission to extend or alter lawful non-conforming uses, and consent to sever property to create new lots. Anyone in attendance today who wants to receive a copy of the decision of the committee on an application must submit a written request for a decision by email. Please ensure you include your name, address, and email address because Committee of Adjustment and the TLAB will be sending notifications and appeal updates by email. If you do not agree with our decision, it may be appealed to the Toronto Local Appeal Body, TLAB, or in some limited circumstances to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Appeal instructions are set out at the bottom of the decision of the committee. Today, I will call each item in the order listed on the agenda. Where an application is uncontested, the agent or applicant will proceed with her presentation if required. The committee may ask questions and/or take the matter into committee for a decision. Each speaker, including the applicant agent, will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address the committee. I will comment when you are reaching the 5 minutes. When addressing the committee, please state your name and address and confine your remarks to the matters outlined in the application. The applicant or agent will present the application to the committee first. Please note, the committee may not entertain revisions to proposals at the hearing today. If the application is substantially revised, the committee may decide to defer it to ensure the revised application is accurate and all those entitled to notice of the application are informed of the changes. Then individuals in support of or opposed to the application will be invited to speak. Committee members may ask questions of each speaker after they have finished their presentation. When all other speakers are finished, the applicant agent has an opportunity to rebut issues raised by the speakers. This will mark the end of the discussion. The application will then be taken into committee for a decision. Can we have a motion to confirm minutes of the last meeting? Zahir? Any seconder? Peter? All in favor? Yim? All in favor? Minutes are confirmed. Are there any declarations of interest of the panel or staff to this morning's agenda? Yes, Larry?
Chair, I'd have to declare a conflict on item number 19.
Okay, thank you. Yim, you have a declaration?
Yes, I declare conflict on item number 1 because I live in the area and I have received a notice of the hearing.
Right, thank you.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, Larry, if you can just state reason for conflict.
Yes, I am acquainted with the applicant.
Thank you.
All right. Madam Deputy Secretary Treasurer, have you received any requests for deferral?
So through you, Mr. Chair, there was one request for deferral. It was item number 1, 236 Augusta Avenue. Pedro Pimentel, who is the agent, has requested deferral in order for a new notice to be circulated because of missing variances. Jacob Rosen at 234 Augusta Avenue, who is registered as an interested speaker, was in favor of that deferral.
All right, thank you. So we need a motion for a deferral? Or do we have to reconnect with the applicant?
We don't have the applicant on the line. At the time that the item was heard, Zahir made the motion to defer, and Peter seconded that motion, and it was all in favor. And Yim was obviously absent from that.
All right, thank you. Are there, Madam Deputy Secretary Treasurer, are there any files to be closed?
See none for today, so we can move on to item number 2.
Okay. So item number 2, 42 Glenair Road. The purpose of the application is to construct a new 3-story detached dwelling with an integral garage, a front porch, and a rear deck. And with this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, our staff report from Urban Forestry, 1 form letter in support, and 4 letters in opposition. Mr. Bronskill?
Hello again, Mr. Chair. Last name is Bronskill, Bronskill. First initial D for David, here acting as agent on behalf of the applicant. And sir, as I noted previously, mailing address in non-pandemic times, 333 Bay Street, Suite 3400, as is on file with our request to committee staff to be able to present today, with my thanks.
All right, would you go ahead, sir?
I will, sir, and I know it's a bit of an odd situation because we're restarting, so I will actually attempt to do this overview, sir, more for the purposes, I think, of the record on YouTube without trying to repeat myself too much for the committee and the panel and bore all of you. And I will do so, sir, without going into comments previously made in the non-recorded session, because I don't think that would be fair for me to address those now. I'll let those speakers speak, sir. You have in front of you, panel and Mr. Chair, the list of the variances. Just as explanation, there is an FSI of 73.09, and you will note later in the package a map showing the numbers or quantitative FSIs in the area. Within that range, this proposal clearly fits. What I'd previously spent some time with you on before was the length and depth variances. As I noted previously, the length is measured along the lot center line from the front of the basement garage to the back of the excavated deck, and the depth is measured from the front yard setback, again, to the back of the excavated deck. What I had spoken with you previously about, and I'll just summarize quickly, that's below grade. Above grade, I think I noted to you previously, from the front projecting bay window to the back of the breakfast, 1-story breakfast nook projection, the actual building length at grade on the ground floor is 20.24 meters. If you exclude the 1-story breakfast nook and the projecting bay windows at the front, the first floor is actually 16.99 meters. When you come up onto the second floor, there's a measurement of 16.99 meters from the front wall to where there's a step back projection piece, which includes the bathtub and if you see on the plans, a slight addition of the master bedroom. If you factor in that additional projection, which has a depth of 1.22 meters, the second floor length is actually 18.21 meters. And as I noted to you before, the third floor from the front of the dormers to the back wall is 14.22 meters. If you exclude the dormers, the length is 13.26. So the length and depth variances are a bit deceiving, but it's how it's measured in the bylaws, this committee knows. If you quickly look at the site plan, with my thanks to city staff, you'll see that the two-story portion, the corner of the building adjacent to 40 Glengarn, those corners are actually lining up. And the only thing projecting in terms of the dwelling beyond is the one-story breakfast nook or breakfast area. And then there's a deck which is labeled as an outdoor room on it. There is the cabana shown on the site plan. There are no variances for that being sought. And so the length, depth, frankly, is in keeping with what exists. And it's why, as I'd indicated previously, it would be appropriate to have a condition, should the committee see fit to allow the variances, that any construction proceeds substantially in accordance with the plans, because that would tie those first, second, and third floor lengths and depths to what are shown on the plans. The last thing I'll just say, Mr. Chair, very quickly, is the height. The height to the top of roof under 569/2013 is met. There's no variance. The height is a variance to the old bylaw, which we hope will fall away sooner rather than later. I know we keep saying that. And then there is the wall height. And as I think I'd shown to you previously, the third floor stair projection is what triggers the front and back wall heights, because they extend and are technically seen from the front and back, even though they're well stepped back. That 10.55 is a measurement for that stair projection. And again, it's why the condition that any construction proceeds substantially in accordance with should be attached, because it would lock down that portion of the wall height variance just to the stair projection. Mr. Chair, I think that's a reasonable summary of what I said before, and I'll just stop for now, let the other speakers speak, and then respond to them, and of course, answer any questions the panel may have.
Thank you. Ms. Gillis?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, can we have your name and address for the record?
Yeah, it's Haley Gillis, and I'm at 40 Glenair Road.
All right, may we have your presentation, please?
Yes, so we have been living in the house. The reason we bought this house is because, as I said before, it's the only house in the neighborhood that has no house situated behind us. So it's really a privacy. It was a good private lot. The house that is existing on the property next door that they're proposing to build is set back pretty much up front, which gives us a lot of privacy to our yard. A 3-story dwelling is going to take away privacy from our property, given windows, and we're mostly concerned with the length of the dwelling. It's going past the required or the permitted allowance for building. It's 17 meters, and they're proposing 26.6 meters. I don't know if it's the deck that's raised that's moving out or it's the house. So that's one issue for us, the length, which will take away privacy, landscaping, windows. There's trees on the property line, very old trees that should stay there because that's also a privacy issue. And the setbacks between the houses is a concern for us as well. We don't know if there's enough space being allowed in between the dwellings. And the third issue that we have, and most of our neighbors have, is that Glenair, this in particular, is a red brick road. And we would like everything in writing. I've reached out to Councillor Josh Matlow that he responded back that it's the property owner's responsibility to pay for and have the city to put the red bricks back the way they were. So the condition that they were found prior to building should look the exact same to when their dwelling is finished, and that is the responsibility of the owner. So that's the third issue. So it's the length, the privacy, the road, and I think that's it for us. And before any building occurs, we would like everything in writing, want to see what's going to be done.
All right, thank you, Ms. Gillis.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Stewart?
Yes, sir. Good morning again. It is Amber Stewart, and my address is 70 Plunkett Road, Unit 6, and I am representing Brian Blumenthal and Lisa Mendeslin, who are the owners of 2 Ridgewood Road, which is to the west.
All right, may I please have your presentation?
Yes, thank you very much, sir. So again, to summarize my client's concerns, you can see on the photo that I have included in the letter that my clients have an irregular property, which is located on Ridgewood Road, located to the west of the subject property. You can see that my client's house is shown outlined in red. The subject property is outlined in blue. So this is a bit of a unique relationship because there is a side yard to a rear yard condition where my client's side yard abuts the backyard of the subject property, and a portion of the backyard, including that irregular piece, abuts the rear yard of the subject property as well. So my clients are very concerned about the impact on privacy and noise with respect to the use of their rear yard amenity space. We have reached out to the applicant and have had some discussions, so we would be pleased to continue working with them after this hearing in an effort to resolve those concerns. But as it stands, my clients have concerns with the length and depth variances and how those relate to the amenity structures in the backyard, including the cabana and the pool and their proximity to my client's amenity space. They also have concerns with privacy and overlook, including in relation to the 3rd-story balcony, which is located on the back wall. And they have concerns with respect to tree protection and preservation, including boundary trees and trees that are owned by my clients in their side yard. So if in the event that this application is approved, as you've heard from Mr. Bronskill, I would ask that at a minimum, the committee impose a condition requiring construction substantially in accordance with the plans, as he has also recommended. So subject to any questions you have, those are my comments.
Any questions, panel? All right, thank you. Mr. Morrison?
Hello.
Yes, Mr. Morrison. Go ahead.
Yes. Can you hear? You can hear me, Mr. Chair? Thank you very much. My name is Ross Morrison. My wife and I reside at 36 Glenair Road. That has been our home for well over 40 years. My principal objection is as follows. There are 10 variances being requested. 10 variances, ostensibly minor. My principal submission to you, Mr. Chair, is that there is no way that these variances, when taken collectively, which they are minor. Collectively, they are major variances and very significant. And I note that your jurisdiction, Mr. Chair, when being asked to approve such variances, you must be satisfied that the variance requested is minor. Well, these variances taken collectively are quite the opposite of minor. They're far from minor, they're major. And they should be subject to the full investigation and review of the regular planning process. This is not the type of application that should flow through the minor variance issues before the Committee of Adjustment. So that is my principal objection, Mr. Chair. To sum up again, there's no way that these are minor variances. Collectively speaking, they are very significant and major in nature. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Litvak?
Mr. Litvak did not respond to calls to join the hearing, and he's not here at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bronskill?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just checking you can hear me.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Just to quickly alert staff, in terms of my responding comments, I'm gonna be asking at one point to look at that colored site plan. I am gonna be asking if they can, with their assistance in the plans, go to the side elevations. And I'm also, apologies, that image from Ms. Stewart's materials, I'll come back to as well. I just wanted to alert them. Those are the three places that I'll just be going in terms of responding. First, sort of the last speaker. As you well know, there are 4 tests here. I don't think it simply becomes a major variance or not a minor variance because we assert it is. There are obviously 4 tests that need to guide your review. And I would simply note, as I did previously, what's resulting from these variances is an FSI that's well within the range of approvals in the area. So collectively, it's resulting in a massing that quantitatively has been approved in the neighborhood, and as I'll explain in a moment, qualitatively is actually fitting with adjacent dwellings. And that's why we go through this hearing process and actually dig into the variances rather than just making unsubstantiated claims that the number of variances means something should go through a rezoning process. In terms of the comments from my friend Ms. Stewart, I would just first recognize, Mr. Chair, she has reached out to us to initiate discussions, which I appreciate. We have provided her with some additional materials, and I'm hopeful that we'll continue those discussions after today with her on behalf of her client. Just a few quick notes, Mr. Chair. The cabana, for which her client has some concerns, actually doesn't have any variances associated with it. And she'd also noted the 3rd floor balcony with privacy concerns. The height at 11 meters is permitted by the bylaw. There's no variance for the number of stories, and there's no variance for that balcony. So it's a balcony that is in fact permitted to be there, so there are no variances associated with it. I would simply say I understand her client's concerns about having compatibility ultimately with this unique relationship. If staff could quickly look at the photo that she had helpfully provided, I wanted just to note 2 things on that for you, Mr. Chair. First, it's essentially a side to rear relationship, but then with a bit of the bulge in her client's backyard. But the bulk of where this dwelling will be is in fact a rear to side relationship. There will be opportunities for working out potentially some screening along those common property lines that may be of assistance. But I would simply note, if you look on that aerial, there's the subject property in blue. There's 40 Glenair to the south, and I'll address the comments of that speaker in a moment. But if you track the corner of 40 Glenair, that's where the rear of the dwelling, other than the breakfast nook that my client is proposing, will actually be located. And we'll see that again on the site plan. But I just wanted to draw that to the committee's attention. It's actually not much closer to the rear lot line than what is proposed. It is closer. There are variances, but that's where the rear wall of the 2-floor portion will be located. So there's still, I would submit to the committee, significant distance between the new dwelling and the house and the property represented by Ms. Stewart. But we also think there'll be some opportunity to have discussions to see if there can't be something to improve ultimately the relationship that exists there. If staff could quickly go to that colored site plan, just so I can maybe hammer that point unnecessarily home with the committee. But again, you see the corner of the proposed dwelling lining up with the corner at 40 Glenair. So I just wanted to show you that again on the site plan so you can understand from the aerial where the new home will be situated. I think it's actually quite helpful. I think it also helps address the privacy concerns of 40 Glenair. There isn't 2-story, 3-story dwelling extending beyond their rear wall. It's the 1-story nook and then the deck or porch area for which no variance is required. If staff could quickly find the elevations in the plans, I just wanted to quickly look at the side and rear elevations with the committee panel to understand why I don't think there are privacy or overlook concerns given where that rear wall would be located. And while just we're scrolling, in terms of efficiency, I will quickly say, in terms of the cobblestone, if something happens to the road, if there's damage to the road as a result of construction, obviously that's something that my client would be responsible for with the city. There's the rear elevation with thanks of staff. So those windows basically face into the rear yard, and it's not going to be that easy, frankly, I would suggest something that's atypical of a rear yard, backyard pattern to have windows in those locations looking over rear yards. The walls are essentially going to line up. I don't think that's an undue privacy concern when I look at that rear elevation. If staff could quickly go to the side elevation as well, I think it's important to understand.
Mr. Bronskill, your
Yes.
time is up. If you could wrap up, please.
Last thing, sir. Yep, just one more down if staff could. Apologies, Mr. Chair. You can see on both of the side elevations, that's the one most relevant in terms of 40 Glenair. No second floor, third floor windows on that side. So in terms of a side elevation being able to look obliquely over 40 Glenair, it's not something that will occur. So, Mr. Chair, I don't think there are any undue privacy impacts. So for all of those reasons, Mr. Chair, we'd hope the variances could be approved subject to the urban forestry condition and the suggestion of a condition that any construction proceeds substantially in accordance with the plans. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Panel, do you have any questions? Larry?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the presentation, Mr. Bronskill, and thanks to those people who called in. Very helpful comments. I had a couple questions. One, the rear outdoor room that extends off the back of the proposed house. The sidewalls, are they open or are they solid?
That elevation is helpful there. The intent is that there is some opening. But the intent is there's also some screening too. And so to be fair in terms of the answer through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Clay, there's a combination of both. If you look on the site plan, there are some slats on the outdoor dining area side that are intended to, where the barbecue is, provide for privacy. On the side where there's some seating, where there's a greater setback from the property line, we don't have those same slats, but there is a planter element closer to the lot line where someone comes off the breakfast nook in that area. So there's a mixture through you, Mr. Chair, in terms of some openness and some closeness.
Yeah, I'm just, what I think I'm getting at is, what the visual impact of a one-story wall on the adjacent neighbor, as opposed to providing them with some privacy. I guess it's two sides of the same coin. But if it's solid wall, it has a different visual impact on the next door neighbor than if it does have some ability for light to pass through. Second question, so on the third story balcony, are you proposing any screening on that balcony?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm just looking at the plans now. There isn't today any screening proposed on it. I'm just pulling up my own third floor plan, sir. Apologies. Where is it? There it is. It's about a 4 square meter balcony, so it's not a large balcony in terms of. I mean, it's a bylaw permitted balcony. We don't have screenings on the sides. I think that would be something if the committee wanted to impose a condition there, we'd have no concern about that. It's certainly not a large area where one is going to congregate, but if there was a concern that stepping out into that and turning to your left or right, you would see over neighboring yards, I'd have no concern with such a condition through you, Mr. Chair.
Great, thanks. I think that might help a little bit of some of the adjacent neighbors' overlooked concerns.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, Yim?
Can I add a comment on the same issue about the third floor balcony? Larry, if you look at the plan, actually, the balcony, the window is set back. Both sides, it's got the roofs sticking out already. If you look at the side elevation, you will see what I mean.
Yes.
So it's sort of set back, it's sort of screened there. You will still, if you want to have more screening, you probably put up a piece of wood there or something. but
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
just
it's
looking at
not.
that. Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm just looking at, but that elevation doesn't show any screening though, right? So
No, but the roof line, the
I get that.
triangular part is actually on both sides of the balcony. And I'm just trying to say, if you sort of introduce another screening, it will be another piece of 1.5, just a tiny little piece sticking out. Whether it is increasing privacy or it's just, I mean, I'm just trying to indicate that the design itself, the glass, the balcony is actually set back from the roof line.
Thanks, Jim. I just wonder, could we go back to Mr. Bronsko? I wonder if he could comment on that aspect of the balcony.
Yes, that's a fair comment and a helpful one. If the FSI calculation map, the area calculation map, which is page 10 of the plans, may actually be helpful with that because it shows how the FSI is calculated, obviously, but then as you go up the building, it sort of shows the different layers that are then in that building, and you can see better on that plan, I think, how the slope of the roof is cut out or carved out to accommodate the balcony, and that's the image on the right. It's a little better, in fact, than even the third floor plan. So I think there is some screening provided by the roof line today that's substantially in accordance with would secure that. If if the committee still wanted to have something there in addition to that roof line, I don't think we'd have a concern, but I do think it's a fair point that I missed before. I think that roof line does offer some privacy screening to the balcony.
Any further questions? Yes, Sahir?
Mr. Bronski, just to clarify for my own thinking, the two things that stood out for me, of course, were the length and depth of the home, and I think one of the neighbors has that as a major concern. Just from my own understanding and that of everybody else listening, the length and depth, which seems quite excessive in one sense, is that the measurement, as I read it, to the below grade basement extension?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, it is, and the elevations, when you look at them, may be helpful in that regard because they show the excavation below the back deck, and so the numbers I gave you earlier to the back of the second floor wall, which my recollection, I think, sir, I'd said 18.21 meters. That's the measurement from the front wall to the rear of the second. And so it's the numbers include that excavated portion below the covered porch. And so it's not the actual above grade house structure itself that triggers these length and depth variances.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any further questions? Okay, we can take it into committee. Any comments? Or do we have a motion? Yes, Peter.
Thanks, Chair. I'll just start with a couple of comments. I do agree. I think the length and depth looked quite extreme at the start, but realizing that it's mostly limited to the underground portion in the rear. I think that went a long way to removing some of my concerns about the impacts of those elements. And I think that adding the condition of substantially in accordance with plans will secure the fact that the kind of rear outdoor room would just be that and not any additional height on top of that. So I'm in support of the application.
Jim?
Yes, I also agree. In the beginning, I sort of, the depth and the length, it seems to be excessive, but the explanation is really good and explain this is only below grade, but then above grade, actually, I think the massing is in keeping with the other property adjacent to it. And in terms of the privacy, I think the third floor balcony is set back, and also it's so small, it's probably just it's not going to accommodate a large number of people. And I think that if you build a house there, you allow third floor, you will have a window there anyway. So, and there's a substantial distance to the neighbor, the side yard, the abutting side yard neighbor. And I'm in support of the application, and I think that the design and also the massing of reducing the length, the upper floor, it actually fit into the context. Yeah.
Larry?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with my colleagues' comments. I think they hit all the main points. The only thing I might add is that I look around the neighborhood, and it is a neighborhood of large homes on large lots, and this is a small existing structure, and it's, I think, a new one along the lines that the renderings seem to imply would very easily fit into the neighborhood and wouldn't be out of place. And I just don't think that the proposal has a substantial negative impact on the surrounding neighbors. So I too am in support of it. And if my colleagues don't have any other further comments, I'm happy to move a motion to approve this application, subject to forestry number 2, and to tie the approval to all the plans submitted.
All right, Yim, second. All in favor? Have your approval. Thank you, sir. Number 3, 1253 Dundas Street West. The purpose of this application is to construct a new seasonal eating establishment, including an addition to the existing building, which will contain a service counter and outdoor patio with a retractable awning canopy structure and 2 ancillary structures, which will contain a secondary service counter and washrooms. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, reports from community planning and urban forestry, support from a property on Dover Court, a property on Quebec Avenue, and 41 form letters in support signed by people on Dover Court, Dundas, Ossington, East Liberty Street, Harbor Street, Mackenzie Crescent, Windermere, Havelock, etc. Mr. Galbraith.
Good morning.
Good morning. Can we have your name, full name, and address, please?
My name is Sean Galbraith. I'm a planner here on behalf of the application. The address is 18 King Street East, Suite 1400.
All right. This is, I know there's a couple of, at least I know of 2 or 3 other places that are like that. Perhaps you could just give us a little summary of what your client's doing here.
Sure. It's I think it's a pretty straightforward application. The site has successfully operated as an outdoor patio space under the Cafe TO program, including respecting operating hours and city noise bylaws. And the owners or the leaseholders would like to expand the facilities a little bit by adding 3 shipping container to the existing building, which is at the southwest, which in this case, on this image, is at the sort of top left corner of the site. 2 shipping containers running north-south, or right on this image, would be used for washrooms, which don't currently exist on the property, and then an additional shipping container running east-west, or in this case, the bottom left corner, would have additional sort of service counter space. And then the patio in between would be continued to be used for seating. In the report that I sent to committee, there's a photo of the property being used as an outdoor patio. Not that one. Scroll down. There. So it's been a patio before, but more on a temporary basis, including for special events and Christmas parade and things like that. And they would like to make it a more of a permanent installation. We worked with city planning on the conditions that they're requesting in the staff report, and we have no concerns. And the owners have done a great job, I think, of talking with the community, as evidenced by the significant number of support letters. I'm happy to answer any questions about the specifics of the project. I think it's fairly straightforward.
All right. Panel, any questions? Yes, Larry.
Just a quick one. When we talk about shipping containers, it has a temporary feel to it as opposed to a permanent structure. It's kind of like stacked on bathers. But when you talk about washrooms, are those going to be actually plumbed into the municipal drainage system, or is it temporary washrooms?
So the use is intended to be longer term. So they will be plumbed washrooms.
Okay.
Even though they are shipping container structures. And I get what you're saying, that it tends to appear a little more temporary, but it is intended to be a longer term facility and installation.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
Yes, Jim. Yeah, just on the same subject, is this seasonal use? Or did this? I mean, the containers is only by name, right? It's still just like a pop-up structure. You have to apply for permit for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering whether the patio is just for the summer or.
It's intended to be a seasonal, so not in the winter, basically.
Okay.
Not patios aren't great in the winter generally.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I understand that. But then I'm just thinking that because you mentioned containers, whether it is going to be a permanent structure that is going to be it's not going to have a permanent building there, or the container will be permanent there.
There is one permanent building currently on the property at the southwest corner that will be expanded through the use of a shipping container on its up to the side of it, and then 2 additional shipping containers added running in a north-south orientation. It is intended to be, a permanent installation that I would say would be very easily removed in the future if the site gets redeveloped. It's both permanent and easily made not permanent.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? Okay, let's go into committee. Any comments, or do we have a motion? So here.
Just a comment, Mr. Chair, and possibly a motion. I think this is the most innovative approach to using that space. And shipping containers it can be often as long-lasting as some of the physical structures that may be put up. So I do see this as a very positive development. And in that sense, I would be quite willing to move forward with the motion to approve.
You have conditions? There's forestry.
There's forestry 2 and the planning conditions.
Yeah, 4 conditions. You second that, Jim?
Yes, I will call this COVID as Inspire project. It's very good, and then I was in support of that.
All right, all in favor? Have your approval,
Chair.
Mr. Galbraith. Thank you.
Chair, can I just double check? I thought I have written down forestry 3. Is it forestry 3 or 2?
Oh, it's 3. At
It's
least
3.
That's what I have. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
You're right, Larry. Thank you. Number 4, 38 St. Paul Street. And the purpose of this application is to construct a 2-story detached dwelling containing 2 dwelling units with a front porch, 2 rear decks to provide for 2 separate entryways, a rear basement walkout, and a rear second-story deck. Also, 1 parking space will be provided abutting the laneway. With this application, we have materials submitted by the applicant, email correspondence from Transportation Services, staff reports from Urban Forestry, and heritage preservation. Mr. Romano?
Morning, Mr. Chairman. Franco Romano, Registered Professional Planner, 2095 Autumn Breeze, Port Credit.
All right, thank you, sir. Would you, can you give us a brief outline of what your client intends to do here?
Certainly, sir. If my slides can be brought up, you'll see on slide 1 that the site is located within a portion of the city that has a mixed building typology. You'll see that it abuts St. Paul Street to the east or the right. It also abuts a laneway to the north, and in between the laneway and the subject site there, or I guess the laneway is in between the subject site and mixed use buildings that include some automotive like uses and office uses along Queen Street. To the west of the subject site is a parking lot, followed by another laneway. So the residential typology within the surrounding area includes 2-story up to 4-story residential buildings. They are detached, semi-detached townhouse buildings. You'll see the floor space index ranges from about 0.23 to 1.7. When we look at those townhouses to the northeast of the subject site, those are at 3.66 FSI. And this is just along St. Paul. If we look at the balance of the area, we'll see the floor space index ranges a little higher as well. So what is being proposed here is on the second slide, thank you kindly, in gray on that site plan is the existing building layout. So we'll see that the proposed building basically squares off that sawtooth portion at that southwest portion of the building. So it basically squares it off. All the building setbacks to the north, the front, the south, the west are all existing. So those are all existing conditions. So the staircase, the eaves are all reflective of basically where the existing footprint is, but the proposed building is a 2-story dwelling. There is an attic portion. That attic portion is being interpreted by the zoning examiner as being a full area of 117 square meters rather than the 43 square meters that is being used, or 46 square meters that is being used for basically mechanical space. But you'll see that that is built within the roof line, and that's what brings the floor space index up to 1.8. Otherwise, this is basically a 2-story building that produces a floor space index of 1.2, fits in quite well with the surrounding character. And in terms of the built form, we'll see that it is sympathetic to the dwellings that are located on St. Paul, as well as the surrounding network. It does pay some homage to some of the heritage attributes that the neighborhood has, but the subject site is not a heritage building. It's listed, and I can speak to the Heritage Preservation Services comments separately if you like. You will see that the proposal is certainly sympathetic to the heritage character. And the platforms in the rear, the grade-related ones basically are like landings in order to provide access. The second floor platform is permitted by the zoning bylaw, and we'll see that there's a projection because of the rear yard setback. And the rear yard parking space, which currently exists, is being proposed with permeable pavers. So that should offset the rear yard landscaping variance that's being sought. So subject to any questions, sir, I submit that the application satisfies all 4 tests for a minor variance and there's no adverse impact.
Yim?
Yes, I'd like the applicant to address the heritage staff report. There's a request for deferral, and I wonder whether that request is outdated, whether his work with the heritage department.
Thank you for that question. Through you, Mr. Chairman. Heritage Preservation Services memorandum has not been updated. So they have submitted this, I think it was March 16th, even though the report date is March 23rd. And I do have comments regarding that report. So with respect to Heritage Preservation Services deferral request, I would submit that this application should not be deferred and that it should be dealt with on its merits. And there are a number of reasons, and I'll list at least 5 of those reasons. Firstly, normally a request of this nature comes from Heritage Preservation Services after they are first made aware of an application to develop a property, and they feel that there is a potential for a heritage resource. In those cases, it is fair under those circumstances for staff to ask for a deferral in order to undertake a review because the proposed development catches them by surprise. That's not the case in this instance. In this instance, the city has studied the area since at least the early 2000s, and they've adopted the King Parliament Secondary Plan in May of 2021. That King Parliament Secondary Plan does have heritage policies, and it identifies specific properties of heritage resource. The subject property is not listed within that King Parliament Secondary Plan as a heritage resource. Furthermore, the city has studied the location of heritage conservation districts and properties throughout the city, and the property is not located within a heritage conservation district, nor is it an area to be studied for a heritage conservation district. Secondly, staff note that the date of construction of the dwelling is currently unknown. They make reference to a Globe and Mail article and a book published in 2021, which deals generally with 19th century homes within the city of Toronto. That book does not reference, nor does the memorandum from Heritage Preservation Services reference the existing dwelling. I believe it's fair to say that they do not know when the dwelling was constructed because it has been substantially altered since it was originally constructed in 1899. City staff records show that the dwelling was constructed in 1899. So the Heritage Preservation Services report statement that occupancy of this dwelling can be traced back to 1874 is not correct. And I believe that the alterations that have been done to the dwelling clearly show that any heritage value is not associated with this dwelling. Thirdly, as I pointed out, the proposed dwelling has been designed to be sympathetic to the mixture of older and new dwellings. And we'll see that the adjacent dwellings and mixed-use buildings that are next door do not have heritage characteristics associated with them. Fourthly, the fact that the building is already listed on the city's heritage register means that the city has at least 3 months from the date of issuance of any building permit to decide whether to designate the property. So that gives them sufficient amount of time to undertake whatever it is that they may believe, and I don't believe that there is any heritage value. And the fifth point relates to the 6-month request. This application was filed 6 months ago, and this process began over 9 months ago with submissions to the city. So the request for a 6-month deferral means that at best, in September of this year, in the event that the committee grants the 6-month deferral, in September, we'll be able to ask the committee to get back onto an agenda. So what that means in September is with a backlog of applications, this application is going to come back in front of the Committee of Adjustment in early 2023. And I don't believe that that is a fair request to be made for this property or this application. So in this regard, I do not believe that the 6 months deferral should be granted, and I believe that the application should be dealt with on its own merits, and Heritage Preservation Services has had time and will have time in the event that they find that there is some heritage value, which we do not believe exists for this building.
Yes, Jim.
Okay, I heard your explanation, but have you had any communication with them since this report? And also, that's the first question. The second question is, if we're going to ignore this or make a decision without further communication from the or message from the Heritage Department, Are you required to have a heritage permit for this project?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, this memorandum was provided to us about a week ago. So we have not received anything new with Heritage Preservation Services. I've asked, but I've not received a response. They said that they've provided their memorandum. And with respect to the second question, yes, the zoning notice that's been filed with the Committee of Adjustment application says that Heritage Preservation Services must sign off. Doesn't mean that they have to give a heritage permit, but they must sign off before a building permit can be issued.
So following your answer, then do you have confidence that later on you will get the agreement on, as from your own analysis that there will be no heritage issues on your project?
Yes, thank you for that question. Through you, Mr. Chairman, yes, we are confident that there is no heritage value associated with this dwelling, and we will be able to get Heritage Preservation Services sign off.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so any other yes, Peter?
Thanks, Chair. I have a question about the lot that's behind this existing lot, 38R, and the interface between what could potentially happen back there and what you're proposing on your lot. So could you give some sense about, I guess the highest and best use of that small portion of land behind your applicant's property?
Yes, thank you for that question. Through Mr. Chair, the lands behind the subject property are being used as a parking lot. They service commercial uses and office uses on Queen Street East. So I believe that is currently and will continue to be highest and best use for that property.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
So one thing about the heritage report was that we often get these at the last minute where they ask for a 6-month or 3-month deferral, and it's a pet peeve of mine that they should have been brought forward their report and asked for a deferral or much earlier. But the other thing that is different about this one is that they have a lot of information on this property, which they don't usually have. And so it seems to me that they are, pretty well in a position to make an assessment or have made an assessment on this, particularly with all the action that has gone on in this area. So I'm not inclined to agree to a deferral for heritage purposes. Sahir? Sahir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, Mr. Chair. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I apologize. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in agreement with your assessment of it. My concern always with some situation like this, with heritage in particular, is that if permission is granted to go ahead with the application, destruction will take place. And if we subsequently discover that that was in error, there's no way to go back. So I'm in agreement with you in that I'm not inclined to supporting this application.
That's not what Don's saying. He says they're not supporting the deferral requested by the heritage.
That's correct.
I'm sorry.
I agree with Don in that way, because if you look at their report, they received the application quite in advance. And I think that we can put in condition, which is already they are subject to that requirement, is to have a heritage review, right? To have a successful, to obtain a heritage review. Can we put a condition like that, Mr. Chairman?
I don't know. I thought that Mr. Galbraith said that they have to sign off. They don't have to give a permit, but they have to sign off before he can get a building permit. So to me, that seems that Heritage has the potential to hold up the project whether we defer it or not.
Yes,
So-
yeah, I agree. So do we need to put that condition or not? That's what my question. Maybe it's irrelevant. They will have to review it anyway, right, for building permit application.
I think you're right. It's probably irrelevant. We don't need to put it in. Larry, did you have a question?
Yeah, so I agree with you, Chair. We often see these potential heritage applications come forward. I think in this case, at least I'm comforted, as I think you are, that the process is such that it will allow heritage to weigh in at a certain time in the process going forward. I am sympathetic to the delay in this situation. I'm also heartened a little bit by the proposed design of the new structure. I think it is sympathetic to the surrounding neighborhood. I tend to err on the side of, if we think we should put a condition in, we should, even if it's irrelevant. And if we think that it would be a good thing to have heritage sign off prior to a building permit, if that's the normal process, I don't have a problem with putting that in as a condition, even if it is moot. But I think it just helps us give some confidence that that process will unfold as it should. So I'm similarly in support of this application.
All right. If there are no further questions or comments, can we have a motion? Larry, did you want to make a motion?
Sure, happy to, Chair. I'll move motion to approve this application subject to forestry condition number 2, and that the applicant would be required to get heritage sign off prior to the issuance of a building permit.
Do we have a seconder? Yim, all in favor? Yim? You have your approval, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 5, 6870 Lippincott Street. The purpose of this application is to construct a townhouse block with 4 dwelling units and rooftop terraces. Also, 4 parking spaces will be provided in the rear yard abutting the laneway. The existing semi-detached dwellings and garage will be demolished. We have, with this application, material submitted by the applicant, support from 70 Lippincott Street, in opposition from 409 College. 70 Lippincott Street is listed both in opposition and approval, but the support came after, and the opposition was withdrawn. And we also have opposition from 419 College and 431 College. Mr. Higgins.
Hello, Mr. Chair. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Very well, thanks. If I could ask staff, thank you for the plans, but could you put on the aerial photographs that I submitted?
So, Mr. Higgins, could you just give us your address for the record?
Oh, my apologies, of course. Peter Higgins, Architect Incorporated, Suite 204, 124 Merchant Street, Toronto.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was thinking in particular the overhead photos, satellite views. My clients have been working on this for 4 years with the city, very slow process, for redevelopment of 68 and 70 Lippincott Street. They're Bowen Lee and Sky Jing. The physical character of the neighborhood is a mix of residential uses, triplexes, multiplexes, townhouses. Multiple examples actually exist on Lippincott Street itself. We believe the proposal is reasonable infill project, particularly because it's adjacent to the mixed-use area to the north, which fronts on College Street. And there is an application for a large redevelopment of the corner of Bathurst and College, which we have studied. And that study also has refuted some of the claims of the opposition, where they think that the laneway is going to be too busy. The laneway, you can see the red dot on number 68, the laneway that runs east and west, services both the north-south laneway, which is Alleycat Lane, which goes down towards to the south towards the Wellesley Hospital. The east-west lane also serves the businesses on College Street to the north, and that's where some of the complaints are. And we understand that the transportation impact study for a new 13-story proposal at 431 College, which is on the corner in the lower left there, found that the development would not impact the east-west laneway in remaining almost identical to the existing conditions. So as we put it, a single parking space accessing the east-west lane from our proposal should have no detrimental impact whatsoever. The existing houses at 6870 are closer to the lane than the proposed development. If you could go to the site plan now, please, staff. There are existing windows on the existing house facing the north towards the neighbors who front on the lane to the south of the buildings on Queen. There has been some concern about overlook privacy. We do have windows to the north. The majority of the windows are facing a blank wall, which is the building, if the staff can put the cursor on the building at 409, which is immediately north of unit number 1. There are no windows at that point along there. You should know that there is a 2-car garage that is presently only inches off the laneway property line. The existing house at 70 is right on the property line along the laneway. We have been working for years now with the city staff. There is a proposed laneway widening, which we have taken into account on both the east-west and the Alleycat north-south lane. The existing house at 68, which is the southerly part, is only 0.66 north of the mutual property line, and the house at number 66, which is there on the bottom of the drawing, is with its garage right on the property line. So we feel that our setbacks along the walkway that goes from Lippincott to the lane at the back to the left, which accesses garbage as well as 4 parking spaces. You should know also that there are presently 4 parking spaces on the 2 properties. The 270s, one is a large 2-car garage, and the other is open parking space. So we're not increasing the number of car parking spaces that presently exist on the property today. I'd be happy to go through any of the variances. We do believe them to be minor. This is an intensification of this lot in a neighborhood that is undergoing intensification, including, if one was to go back to the, if staff could please go back to the aerial photograph, shows 56 Lippincott as a 4-unit townhouse structure that goes from Lippincott right to the lane. We mentioned earlier the development at the corner of Bathurst and College, and what we have here we think is a modest proposal that provides additional housing in an area very close to 2 arterial roads, and we think it's fully in line with the city's development attitude to intensify these areas of the city. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, or I can go through all the variances and give you my opinion of each one. Given that we've lost a bit of time this morning, perhaps it's better if the committee asks me if they have any concerns or if there's anyone registered to speak for them to speak.
Yes, Ian?
Are we asking questions now, or
No,
are we
no,
waiting
ask,
for other?
ask questions now if you want.
Oh, okay, I just have just three small questions. The first question is, the storage area that you have south of the parking space, is that for garbage or is that for lockers? Is it like that? It is a big area.
Yes, it is the area that, again, city staff require that we have for garbage and recycling.
Okay.
It says garbage enclosure for unit 1, 2, 3, 4. That would be a combination of garbage and recycling.
Okay. And then this garbage will be wheel out on the curb when it's collection time, right? Yes.
That's correct. It has to be pulled out from the enclosure. There's a gate that's swinging there where it says topographic number 104.86. So there's a gate there that hides, in a 6-foot fence all the way around, that hides the view of the garbage enclosure, and you would walk down the walkway, which is at the bottom of the screen, and out to the front front sidewalk along Lippincott.
And the second question, you have quite a bit of paved areas at the backyard and also in the parking spaces. That is permeable paving material, or
yes,
you propose
definitely.
That?
Yes,
Okay.
definitely permeable paving both in the parking area and along the walkway.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have a lot of green space, and there was concern from planning about that. We do have one private garden for unit number 4.
Mm-hmm.
We have planters and window wells along the walkway. If you can pan out of the site plan just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Along the south side to give a buffer to the units 3 and 4, each of which are set back further than unit 2, to create some space for entry and to get them away from the wall of number 66, which is right on the property line.
And the third question is a small one. What is the average size of your unit? Is this a family, like cater for family, I guess? Right?
Yes, it certainly is. I don't have the square footage right in front of me, but I do actually. Unit 1, 52.4 meters squared. Unit number 2, 50. Unit number 3, 52.8. Unit number 4, 58. And each, I'm just looking at my own plans here, there are entry closets, powder room, kitchen, dining, living. In each case, there is a master bedroom, walk-in closet, and ensuite on the second floor, and 2 bedrooms and a bathroom in a little study area on the 3rd floor for the units. And that really is for all of them. And then there's a rooftop amenity space accessed by a staircase in the middle of those staircase structures are set well back from the surrounding walls. Those are, if I wanted to speak to it earlier, I would have said that those staircase units, we intentionally set them back so they wouldn't have an impact. And if the staff could go to the 3D diagrams that we've produced, you can see that they are not visible very much from the street because of their large setbacks.
Mm-hmm. So
Could staff try to find the 3D, please?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, Ms. Jan.
So
Staff could go to the other.
Yes.
I believe the 3Ds are in a separate compartment of the file.
Mm-hmm.
That's a view there looking along the north lane, by the way, with the windows that face north to the neighbors.
And also the rooftop railing, you propose glass railing is 3'6". Will that amenity space will create privacy issue? You think that you may need some?
But that's a good point.
Screening.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, that's a very good point. We don't have any issues for privacy overlook to the east because there's a school across the street and a schoolyard and a playground. To the north, where you see the 3-story building in gray there, there are no windows along that side, so you'd really be looking at the roof. The units along the side, if we can scan to another 3D, please. So the railing is there. We're trying to keep it light so that there's not an issue of added visual height. Is there a view from the rear or the side, please, staff? Okay, maybe we didn't submit the one for the rear. In terms of the overlook, if it is of a concern, we certainly would add privacy screens that are otherwise still between the units, but we could put something along the laneway. The amenity space is fairly small, and if we wanted to go to the roof plan again, I think those amenity spaces would feel much tighter if there was privacy screening all the way around. We're essentially looking at the rooftops of all of the adjacent commercial buildings along Queen and overlooking the lane towards Bathurst to the west, school to the east, and a blank wall immediately adjacent at number 66. So I don't see that there's a lot of privacy overlook concerns. We're also putting planters on the roof so that people can't get right to the edge of the units 3 and 4. You can see in this roof plan, there's a planter that keeps people basically away from the edge of the overlook situations there.
That's a very good idea, I think. Yeah, thank you so much.
If staff could blow that up a little bit, please. So therefore, the access of the 2 units that come off the laneway, the walkway, you see there planters, and the railing that would block you from getting to the edge is to the north of the planters, and in the case of the left side one, to the east of the planter. So I think we've handled privacy quite well. As I mentioned, we've been dealing with various city departments for many years now. The back and forth has been very tedious. However, I think we have a modern take on a townhouse in an area that is adjacent to future development along College Street. The only opposition we have is from 2 owners along College, and we did submit their letters along with their correspondence with us, where they were essentially asking for something put on title for these properties to the effect that nobody in the future would ever object to whatever might happen at 409 College Street in a future development. And my clients and their legal advisors rightly said that's not something that they should put on title. And obviously, if the process is going through with the corner development and 409 College to the east eventually is enlarged, well, it'll be dealt with at that time. And I think this is a very, very well cited property, given the connections to rapid transit, etc., school, park. And that's my submission, and I hope I've answered your questions.
Yes, only I asked because on all your elevations, I do not see the planters in relationship to the railing, that's all. Yeah.
It's a very good point. Those planters are there in plan. They just haven't been rendered in the facade drawings.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ashley Ross?
Hi, yeah, hi. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. I think for a matter of time, I think my letter of objection is quite clear. I guess to note when you will deliberate, this back and forth for 4 years, it is a clear sign then that they're asking for a lot, for a little piece of land, which totally understandable that they want, in the city, we do want to intensify, but I think they're asking a little too much here. And that's why it's been taking that long. I I guess in summary, really for today, it doesn't work. It's not practical because those doors that face the laneway, even though there will be a laneway dedication, are right on that laneway. And for now, for commerce along College Street, there are trucks coming and going along that laneway. It's just going to cause chaos and confusion and neighborhood fights because those entries off of College, off of that laneway. And then for tomorrow, looking at tomorrow, there is an official plan amendment that was done in 2017. There's a College Street Avenue study, and that allowed for mid-rises. And by bringing those living spaces, these dwellings closer to laneway and further down along this property line, it's going to have to be recalibrated in terms of the setbacks for those future developments along College Street, which then would really say that this is not within keeping of what the intent of the zoning is in the official plan. That's it.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Fish? Mr. Fish?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance. I definitely agree with what Ashley Ross.
Mr. Fish, could we have your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Joseph Fish, F-I-S-C-H. I'm the president of the corporation which owns 419 College Street. And should I proceed with my comments?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'd just like to point out a few things that make me opposed to this whole development. First of all, there's been nothing in the city for any application for the development of the northeast corner of that block. That's all the way to about 417. Nothing is being changed on it. It's continuing as it is. And that's exactly the neighbor of this new project. Second of all, I would like to say that I was not served with documents for this meeting. I happened to find out from the neighbors that this was happening, and I should have been served as an owner of one of their adjacent properties. I'm also upset about the noises that will come from 4 new rooftop uses of the property. It'll make the use of the properties along College Street much more unpleasant, with constant noise and sights and barbecue smells and all kinds of things in this overkill project. I think the applicant said that there were similar projects on Lippincott. I would suggest that there's only one, which basically replaced an old non-conforming salami factory, which stank up the whole neighborhood from the smells of salami. So that's why that was a proper thing to do to get rid of a major nuisance on the property. But this is not the case. This is 2 peaceful houses with a beautiful old Chinese gentleman doing his garden and growing his vegetables. So it's a totally radical overkill of the property. It will definitely interfere with delivery trucks to my office at 419 College Street and to the adjacent businesses. Where even now, quite often, we have to move our car while we're unloading a small load. This will make it interrupted in every case when the owners of these 2 additional spaces will want to park. I would like to point out that the parking at present for the 2 houses is on a different lane. It's not in the east-west lane, it's in the north-south lane, so it doesn't interfere as much with the use of our lane as we have now. And there definitely will be privacy issues. I have my office right opposite this 4th additional unit, and there's enough noise as it comes now. I'm going to be hearing noise, kids screaming and yelling, whatever, to interfere with my use of the place, which I'm continuing to do for a long time. So definitely this tiny 2 little properties are trying to be overkill by putting on 4 different houses, backyards and the roof, much higher. Every item in the list of variances requires an adjustment or help from the Committee of Adjustment, which shows that this was not the intended use of these 2 lots. These lots were intended for 2 single-family dwellings. They become rental apartments or homes with more than 2 units, but now it's just an overkill of this tiny little lot. Thank you.
Any questions? Mr. Higgins?
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Mr. Chair. Not sure I was on there. Could I ask staff again to put up the aerial photographs, please, for reference? And by the way, could you go back one, please, to that last? Because that shot was up all the time that the 2 neighbors were talking, and it was that shot there. That is the south side with 2 entrances to units number 3 and 4. Lippincott is to the right, the lane is to the left, excuse me. So this was up while the opposition was speaking and they were talking about entrances from the lanes. Could we go to the north facade, please? Because this is the south. So I didn't want the committee to be misled. So there are no entrances to these units from the lane, save above, about where that tree is to its right, thank you, would be an opening in the gate for a fence for the parking for one of the units. There is only one parking space being accessed off the east-west laneway that both Mr. Fish and Mr. Ross were speaking of their concerns for. I certainly understand that, but there are 4 parking spaces on the property now. And if we could now go to the aerial photographs, please. We are not increasing the number of parking spaces. If we can zoom in on that one, for example. And down a bit, thank you. So you can see a 2-car garage on the number 70, kind of a reddish roof, and then a graveled area or paved area that's parking for number 68. There are 4 spaces there. The garage itself is right on the edge of the property line, and the house that has a reddish roof, sort of a 1-story, is also right on the property line of the laneway. As I stated, we are now going to be a meter further away, both for setbacks and for future laneway widening. The comments were barbecue smells and peaceful neighbors and kids screaming and yelling and all of that. And I would like to suggest that is what a neighborhood is all about. There's obviously the potential for somebody living in these houses to have children that might scream and yell at some point. They certainly have room for barbecuing. We're proposing barbecues that are above the roof line of the 2 gentlemen that are worried about this. They're screaming and yelling from the school right across the street. Delivery trucks were mentioned as a concern. Could we go to one of the other 3Ds, please? And I read to you that there had been a thorough study by the city with regards to the potential for 419, 431 College Street to be redeveloped. Sorry, if we can go to the aerial photographs, please. You can see in those drawings that the amenity space is above the roof line, essentially. Could you find another 3D, please? Just scrolling through. The city did a transportation impact study for this 13-story proposal that is on the corner. We don't know what might happen on the 2 gentlemen's properties to the east of that development I'm speaking of, but it was found that the development would not impact that development at 419, 431, a 13-story building would not impact the east-west. They're not talking about the north-south. They're talking about the access east-west from Lippincott to Bathurst. It would remain nearly identical to existing conditions in terms of loading, waiting times, etc. So I don't see how a single parking space coming off the laneway, not 4, not 2, but only 1, is going to have any impact whatsoever on the use of the College Street commercial. What else did I want to say? Overkill is certainly not something that the city is calling this. The city planning department has not commented other than to help us along the way. Mr. Ross mentioned earlier that it's taken 4 years. Well, it takes a long time in the city, and I'm sure he knows about that for the development just to the west of him. 4 years, we minimally reduced the size of the proposal, minimally. But most of it has been servicing and shadow studies and overall look of the building. It wasn't ever a matter over those 4 years of making this from a 4-story or 5-story building to a 3-story with a rooftop amenity. It's just not the case.
Mr. Higgins, your
Thank you.
your time is up, so if you could just wind up, please.
We would have delivered a package to Mr. Fish's property as we would to Mr. Ross's property. That is our intention every time. And they were hand-delivered packages to surrounding neighbors on Lippincott, on Bathurst, and along College. To the best of our ability to get those packages in the hands of owners, that's beyond us. If the city didn't notify Mr. Ross, I'd rather doubt, or Mr. Fish, rather doubt that they didn't, but nevertheless, he has a right to argue if he wasn't served, and the city's going to have to look into that. I think this is, as I said before, as an experienced architect working in town, that this is a very good intensification with minimal impact on the neighbors. And given that the neighbors are very quiet to the south, where there are multiplexes 2 doors down, like a small apartment building, the salami factory, which I knew about, but didn't know where it was. I don't remember the smell. It's been replaced and intensified. I think what we've got here is something that is a nice interim blend between the mixed-use residential along Lippincott and the commercial along College and any further development along College.
Thank you, sir. Any questions, panel? Okay. Yes, Sahir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the applicant, I do want to commend you for 4 years of perseverance. I see the project as being a very positive one, I think, in the neighborhood. My only concerns that I had were related to variances 12 and 13, and that's to do with landscaping. You have answered the question that my colleague had raised earlier about permeable paving. Would you be amenable to having that as a condition?
I most certainly would.
Thank you.
Quite happy to have that. Thank you.
Yes, any further questions? We take it into committee. Any comments? Yes, Yim?
Yeah, I can start with comment. Actually, I live very close by, and then I walk by quite often, and Lippincott and also Bloor Street and College Street. I think this is the so-called the missing middle. We provide very quality residential units. And also, I think that the design actually addressed many issues and is not trying to overload the use of the north lane and also maintaining the capacity of the west lane. And other than the landscaping issues, I would like to get all the pavings, even the walkway to the unit doors, that walkways, and also the parking area and the rear yards should be permeable material. And I'm happy with the proposal.
Any further comments?
And I will be supporting it.
We have a motion?
Are there any other comments? Otherwise, I can make a motion for approval with condition that the walkway towards the front door of the units and also at the rear of the parking space and the paved area of the storage area will be permeable material. And any other conditions?
Don't see any.
And also maybe tied to the roof plant because that's the only plant that's showing the planters.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Yes, Peter? All in favor? Thank you. You have your approval, sir. Thank you. Number 6, 831 Logan Avenue. And the purpose of this application is to convert the existing 2-story semi-detached garage coach house into a 3-story semi-detached dwelling unit with an attached carport by constructing a side 3-story addition and a 3rd-story addition. The existing 3-story detached dwelling will be maintained. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, reports from planning and urban forestry, and opposition from 837 Logan Avenue. Mr. Race.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon.
Okay, it is afternoon. Can we have your name and address for the record, sir?
Craig Race, 150 King Street West. And if staff could please pull up our design brief while I speak, I'd appreciate it. Should I begin, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So you may find this application familiar. It was before the committee in October, just a few months ago. At the time, it included a conveyance to dedicate this coach house onto its own independent property. That conveyance is no longer part of the application. If you go to the second page, please. The feedback we got from the committee at the time was that the building was supportable. However, putting it on its own independent lot was not. Now that the conveyance is no longer part of it, this will always remain on the same property as the main house, similar to a Laneway suite. So in spite of your hopeful familiarity with it, I'll continue through and just try to be brief. Next page, please. There is an existing 2-story brick structure that will be maintained. So a small side addition and 3rd floor is being constructed as part of this application. A carport will also be constructed on the west edge that is fully cantilevered in order to protect a tree root zone. And this existing structure forms part of a small community of coach houses along McConnell Avenue and the adjacent laneway. Next page, please. Next page shows some images of the prevailing character of these coach houses. They tend to have, well, each one of them has an integral garage and a door on the street. So they're fairly charming, and their house-like character is something we tried to mimic with our design. Next page, please. Looking at the site, the clients are very enthusiastic about architecture and modern architecture in specific. The main house recently received a rear addition, and we used angles in order to preserve sunlight and views for the neighbor immediately north of us. As across our site, they have views of Withrow Park. Those kinds of design gestures and the character of the addition is something we're trying to mimic to create a cohesive whole on the property. Next page, please. Further to that, you can see we've stepped in the top floor of the coach house to align with the adjacent coach house. And we've also dropped the northwest corner of the structure to what zoning would consider main wall height for a detached home. We did this in concert with the planning department to minimize shadow on the adjacent property and its perceived visual impact. Like I mentioned, the carport is cantilevered, and we are maintaining a parking space through the existing garage door at grade, as well as putting a front door on McConnell Avenue. Next page, please. There are quite a few variances. This wasn't reviewed by staff as a laneway suite. If it were, it would simply have one side yard setback variance next to McConnell and a height variance. Staff determined it was going to be reviewed as a house behind a house, which is why there are quite a few variances. I'm happy to answer questions on them all. When we take sort of a form-based approach to this, like I mentioned, we really tried to shape the house to match the height of the adjacent structure as well as its setbacks and minimize its perceived massing for shadow impacts on the neighbors. Next page, please. The following diagram indicates how we align those overall heights as well as the drop corner. The 7.5 meters at the drop corner was our requirement when this was considered a detached house, and that continues in the application. Next page, please. So quite a bit of neighborhood outreach and stakeholder outreach was done. The neighbors were canvassed. There were quite a few letters of support on the previous go-round. And we also conferenced with community planning in order to reach the design we achieved. If we go to the last page, I'll conclude by saying detached secondary suites have become a really important part of our city's goal to gently intensify our existing neighborhoods. Laneway suites are codified in our zoning bylaws and provincial policy, and that's continuing to expand with the recently approved garden suite policy and other EHON efforts you may be familiar with. This site is unique because it doesn't actually fit into any of those defined typologies, but it does exist as part of a cluster of historic homes that really create a welcoming streetscape across from a very significant park in the neighborhood. Our goal was to use good modern architecture to take the existing structure and revitalize it as a modest home. We think the solution is the ideal compromise of our housing policies and the contextual needs of this community of coach houses. I'm personally very excited about this type of infill housing in our city. I think it's good for our communities and a responsible way for Toronto to grow. And thank you very much for my time today, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I find it very interesting that this is not a laneway suite. Apparently, it's not a garden suite. I don't think we've had we've had applications for garden suites before the legislation was passed, so I personally don't know what the requirements for garden suites are, but apparently planning says this is too large or it doesn't fit the criteria for a garden suite. It's a house behind a house. I don't understand exactly what that is in terms of the legislation. I take it, Mr. Race, this is not a legal non-conforming use in that the existing existing building was not used for dwelling purposes. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chair. This is an as-of-right use for the site. This is in an R zone.
I don't understand what you mean, an as-of-right use.
So detached secondary suites are permitted in this area, and to fill in the gaps on this, it would not be considered a laneway suite because it's not on public laneway, and it's not considered a garden suite because that policy has not come into effect as of the timing of this application. And regardless, we're not sure how staff would be able to apply that in this case. So it's really something where we tried to take a form-based approach rather than tweaking the variances specifically.
Okay, I also find it very interesting that the planning department objects to this on the basis that it doesn't fit within the character on Logan Avenue, and yet this property faces on McConnell. I understand that the primary house is on Logan, but this property seems to me to fit in perfectly with the properties that coach houses on McConnell. So I find it strange that the planning department is only talking about properties on Logan Avenue and refusing their approval on that basis. All right, does anyone else have any further questions? Okay, so we move on to Mr. Kane.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Patrick Kane. I live at 835 Logan, 2 houses to the north. We continue to oppose, my wife is also in opposition, she's in a meeting at the moment, continue to oppose this project largely on the basis of loss of winter sunlight. SunCalc, which is a useful sunlight calculator, sunlight visualization program, shows the loss of sunlight in late November and also in early March, times when we need sunlight. But I also recently noticed from our kitchen window the sun rising more or less in the space that this project would occupy. Now, last time this came up, there were references by the applicant to what he termed a cohesive street wall along McConnell on the north side of the park. That phrase struck our attention because we would be behind that wall and we don't particularly want to be. Now, we are not against intensification. With the Ontario line moving into the neighborhood, I probably should have more housing than we do. But I think this project needs to have more attention, to show more attention to the character of the immediate neighborhood. I think it could be smaller and stay at 2 stories, for example. It should be possible to build a small home with the bathroom and laundry and utilitarian functions like that in a basement. And keep the living area to 2 stories and give the tenant, if there were one, if they had a car, street parking. I have rarely had trouble finding street parking in the neighborhood. Adding a home to the neighborhood while keeping it more or less to the size of the existing structure, which seems to me a reasonable compromise. I will also say too that both the previous application and this application came as something of a surprise. We both found out about both of these applications when the city paperwork came in the mail. And that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions, panel? No. Sequoia McDowell.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you. Can we have your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Sequoia McDowell and I reside at 837 Logan Avenue.
Yes.
The houses, may I continue?
Yes, please.
Thank you. The houses from 831 to 837 share what I'd call a light shed, which is to say the amount of light that shines through the block, especially in the winter when the sun's angle is low and there's precious little light in the morning. Our neighbors at 831, being at the end of the block with the side of their property facing south, naturally get the vast majority of this morning light already, particularly in winter when light is scarce. Given that they already get the vast majority of the light, it does not strike me as reasonable that they take even more, building a second unit on their property both taller and wider. It may sound peculiar to talk of, quote, taking sunlight, but the fact is that the sunlight is a zero-sum equation. If they get more, the rest of us get less. And as stated previously, we already get precious little in the winter. I'm a proponent of infill and of increasing density, and I'm not against our neighbors at 831 Logan improving their property. They can do this, however, without putting undue burden on their neighbors as this design does. Specifically, they could design the new unit to take advantage of the space currently used for car storage in the existing coach house. Convert the off-street car storage in the structure, the garage, in question to living space and excavate the basement, and a reasonably sized unit of 3 stories of living space can be built without expanding the structure so it looms over and shades our backyards. Instead of sacrificing the garage parking spot, however, the design from our neighbors at 831 Logan proposes to push all of the sacrifice onto us, the homeowners at 833, 835, and 837. It does not strike me as reasonable that we neighbors should sacrifice hours of precious winter sunlight permanently to ensure that our neighbors at 831 can expand their rental unit without giving up their garage. Why should all of the sacrifice and burden be foisted on us? The new design preserves 2 units of off-street parking on the property. If 2 units of off-street parking are essential for our neighbors at 831, in addition to building up a rental unit, this can also be easily achieved. 2 cars can be parked on their property currently outside the garage in the coach house, which is to say there are 3 parking spots in total currently. If the existing coach house does not have the footprint extended, there will still be 2 off-street parking spots. Why not let one of the tenants or Airbnb renters use one of those spaces? I wish our neighbors at 831 had taken an opportunity to discuss this development plan with us, their impacted neighbors, but these neighbors have never spoken to us, and the first I heard of this was from a notice in the mail. I've actually met all of my neighbors in our building and the adjacent buildings since moving in December, with the exception of our neighbors who's at 831 who have never spoken to us for any reason. Some comments on Mr. Race's presentations, parts of which shocked me. This design does not, quote, preserve our views or, quote, minimize shadows. This struck me as a joke. Drastically expanding the facade, both taller and wider, and then trimming a tiny corner off the back and claiming this minimizes shadows and preserves views is absurd. What would minimize shadows is not increasing both the height and width of the building to the wall previously mentioned. Planning is correct. This doesn't fit the character of Logan Ave. And Mr. Chair, they speak to Logan Ave rather than to McConnell because we on Logan Ave are the ones who this design impacts primarily. Neighborhood outreach did not reach us, and this is responding to another comment from Mr. Race. Neighborhood outreach did not reach us. We were never contacted in any way, and I, in fact, have never met our neighbors at 831. I further have a question of fact about something that Mr. Race said. He said that a previous hearing determined that the building was supportable. After my comments, I'd asked the committee to verify whether what Mr. Race's claim that this building had previously been determined by this committee to be supportable is in fact true. Our neighbors should by all means improve their property, add a rental unit, and preserve 2 parking spaces. None of these goals requires a variance. Just don't build the thing so enormous. I know our neighbors at 831 want to maximize the value of their property, and I don't object. All I'd ask is that they please not block our small view of the park. They please not increase the shade on our yard in winter. And just generally, please consider your neighbors and the impact that this design has on us. Thank you, committee.
Thank you. Any questions, panel? All right. Mr. Race?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So with respect to the comment of building an as-of-right design here, unfortunately, that's simply not possible. The configuration of the site means that no kind of secondary suite would ever fit into an as-of-right box with any of the zoning bylaws, which is why variances are required in this case. And the election to go with a 3-story design rather than a 2-story was definitely a double-edged sword that we had to weigh with our feedback from the neighbors and from community planning. Maintaining parking on the site was a priority we heard. Not having height was also another priority. So it was very difficult for us to decide which way to proceed with, eliminate parking and put more cars on the street or not. We elected to maintain the parking space because the adjacent coach houses also have that typology, and we think it's better to keep cars off the street than on whenever possible. That was the feedback we got from planning and from many of the neighbors we talked to. With respect to sunlight, the good news is that this house is directly south, essentially, of the neighbors to the north. So the majority of shadows are cast when the sun is at its highest point in the sky. It rises east of the structure and sets west. Unfortunately, in those cases, there's already a 3-story coach house that is contributing the majority of the shadow. And also all these properties are eligible for Laneway suite development. So I would not be surprised if in the near future, we see rows of 2-story houses down the entire laneway, in addition to the massing we're placing on McConnell. And there was a comment about putting space in a basement. Unfortunately, the existing structure does not have a basement, and we would have to demolish it in order to add one. So we decided, again, in concert with planning, that maintaining the heritage facade and incorporating it into the design was an optimal trade-off compared to demolishing it and building a basement. And did I miss anything there? I think that was all, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Panel, any questions? All right, thank you. We will go into committee. Any comments? Or do we have a motion? Peter.
I'll start with some comments. I have some issues with this application. I really want to support it, but I find that it's asking for too much. I'm looking at it basically from the lens of, if it were a laneway suite, what would the regulations be? And I think it gets pretty close to it, but I agree with the neighbors' comments to the north that the third story is too much. I think I would be supportive of this application if it were 2 stories. I think there has been effort put into maintaining structures and keeping setback distances, and I think those are admirable. But I do think the third story imposes perhaps too much negative impact on the neighbors, and that's my main comment and my main reason for not being able to support it.
Any further comments? Yes, Larry? You must be muted, Larry. We can't hear you.
Apologies. I have a slightly different take on this one than Peter, although I understand exactly what he's saying, and I wanted to thank the neighbors for all the comments. I look at it in the context of an overlook of Withrow, and if you go around all the streets that front on Withrow, the prevailing character is 2.5 to 3 story homes, and that's not surprising when you have open space like that. So I think that the juxtaposition of this home relative to the park isn't out of keeping with the prevailing built form around the park. I do also think that it sort of mirrors and marries right next to an existing 3-story coach house. So I don't think, frankly, given that there's already a building there, that the impact, the incremental impact on the neighborhood and the neighbors is significant. I thought the design was thoughtful. I think, you know, again, intensification in this area is a good thing. When you have that kind of robust amenity space immediately adjacent is such that having more accommodation in these kinds of neighborhoods, I think, is a good thing. You know, a lot of the, even though it is a little wider and a little taller, a lot of the variances are existing conditions. So I'm inclined to support this application, even though I understand that planning is recommending refusal. I think the context for this application on the street and the surrounding neighborhood suggests that it would fit in quite fine.
Yim?
Yes, I must add my comment because last time I was sitting on the panel to hear this case. At that time, I was the only one that maybe hinged on the decision because there's one opposed and then the other one was supportive. But because we have a reduced team last time. At that time when I opposed it was because of the servants. I did not agree that you can chop up property into a very tight lots. But at that time, I also expressed that the building itself is actually quite innovative, and also it improved, in my opinion, that the streetscape on Cornell Avenue. And I have both times the planning department recommending the refusal, but I think that this time I can support it because they are not asking for the servants.
Thank you. Sahir?
I am of the opinion that when planning makes a recommendation, I'd like to believe that there's good merit behind that thinking. The existing structure as is could very easily accommodate a third story just above the existing structure. But widening it and expanding the existing structure, I'm not too keen on that. So I feel that I can't support this particular application as is.
Okay. All right, do we have a motion? Yes, Peter?
Well, let's see what happens. I put forward a motion for refusal of the application.
Do we have a seconder? All right, we have a motion to refuse. All in favor? All opposed? All right, do we have a motion for approval? Larry?
Sure, I'm happy to see what happens, and I'll move a motion to approve this application, I think subject to forestry condition number 2.
Yes. Yes, do we have a seconder? Yim? All right,
Yes.
all in favor? That's 3. All opposed? 2 opposed. You have your approval, sir. Thank you. Number 7, 16 Essex Street. And the purpose of this application is to alter the existing 2-story detached dwelling by constructing a 1-story rear addition, also to construct an ancillary structure, detached garage in the rear yard abutting the laneway. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant and correspondence and concern from 18 Essex Street. Mr. Ferrara?
Good afternoon. I'm Albert Ferreira, 532 Muirfield Street in Oshawa. I'm the construction manager representing the work being done for the client. We're putting in a garage at the rear, a lane, and a small addition at the rear, which lines up with the existing home on the east side and has a 1-foot setback on the west side. Something fairly simple. I noted that the neighbor at 18 has some concerns about the setback. I can see that there was a miscue there by the architect where she put that we are 60 centimeters or 2 feet away from the slab of the neighbor's garage. It should actually show on the southwest should show 85 centimeters, and on the northwest corner should show 72 centimeters. Where I've already spoken to the architect about getting this revised so that it shows correctly. Our plan is to stay that 1 foot away from the property line on either side.
So that doesn't affect any of the variances, sir?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. Thank you. So we go to Mr. Cheng.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you. Can we have your name and
Thank you.
address, sir?
Yes, Cheng. First name is Cheng at 18 Essex Street.
All right, can we have your submission, sir?
Yes, essentially, I think the agent already pointed out that there is some inconsistency on the site survey and their proposed site plan. And if they could rectify that and have it reflected on the new site plan, that would be great.
All right, so you, if that's the case, you have no objections?
No, yeah. Other than the property boundary relative to my garage, we don't have any other objection.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Just go back to Mr. Ferreira. So we just need confirmation, Mr. Ferreira, that those changes on the plans are going to be made?
Yes, absolutely. We've already put that into motion. it was just an oversight because it does show on the survey drawing, or actually on the submitted drawing by the architect. On the lane side, we are showing 12 inches off the property line, but then what she did is on the backyard side, she marked 2 feet off of the neighbor's garage with a 6-inch overhang on the garage. It shows there. So that's the discrepancy, and we'll correct that right away and make sure that we are the 12 inches from the property line as it's supposed to be. If you can see here, it shows 55, and I can't move it. It kind of go up a little bit. 55 and 42 centimeters from the slab of the neighbor's house to the property line. So yes, right there. And what she did on the proposal is she put 24 inches or 2 feet from the neighbor's slab, assuming that his garage was 12 inches also from the property line, but his garage is a little bit up on an angle and further away from the property line.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, panel, do you have any questions or do we have a motion? Yes, Sahir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd be quite happy to move a motion with the, it's a very straightforward application. The only proviso would be to be able to indicate the changes on the plan as indicated by the agent. I'm not sure which, how one would word that.
I think it's a revised garage plan. Yeah. Yeah, it's the revised.
Indicated as. Mm-hmm. Would one suggest that it be subject to a revised garage plan or garage setback plan?
I think we could say that the plans be corrected as indicated by the agent. On the condition that the plans be corrected as indicated by the agent.
Sounds great.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe that staff would include what those measurements should be on the plan.
Do you mean without a condition?
No, as part of the condition,
Right.
that the revised plans would show the correction of the measurement and be specific to what that measurement is.
All right, thank you.
As stated by the agent.
Right, thank you. All right, do we have a seconder for the motion? Peter, all in favor? Thank you. You have your approval, sir. Thank you. Number 8, 50 Ferris Road. The purpose of this application is to legalize and to maintain the existing one-story front attached garage. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant. We have support from 3 properties on Ferris Road. Mr. Lopez?
Yes, good morning. My name is Bruno Lopes from MXL Engineering, and I'm the agent on behalf of the owner.
Okay, Mr. Lopez, I think this is, we just have your address, sir?
1649 St. Clair Avenue West.
Thank you. I think this application is pretty straightforward and we don't need any presentation. So do you have anything to say before we take it into committee?
No, we're just bringing to the legal side something that the owner started, and he wasn't aware of the permit requisition. So we're just doing what needs to be done to bring in compliance. And as you said, it's very straightforward.
Thank you. So panel, do we have any comments? Peter?
I'd like to bring a motion for approval. I think the variances being requested are minor in both amount and impact, and this does fit the nature of the street. It's more of a suburban area of Toronto, and many similar types of houses. So I move approval with no conditions.
All right, thank you. Peter, do you second that? Larry, you second that? Okay, all in favor? Have your approval, sir. Thank you. Number 9, 120 Yardley Avenue. The purpose of this application is to legalize and maintain the enclosed front porch, also to permit a one-story ancillary structure, a detached garage with storage above, a hot tub, and a deck in the rear yard of the property. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, correspondence, and, pardon me, material submitted by the applicant, and a staff report from planning. Mr. Sultani?
Hi, it's Mrs. Sultani.
Mrs., I knew I was going to get in trouble. Can we have your full name and your address, please?
Yes, it's Nilufar Sultani from KH Davis Engineering. I'm the agent on behalf of the owner, and my address is 1468 Danforth Avenue.
Okay, so we have some opposition. Oh, no, we don't. That's the owner. Ms. Jeffrey, is that right?
Mr. Jeffrey, yes.
Okay. So, does anybody on the panel need a presentation of this matter? No, we don't need a presentation, Ms. Sultani. So is there anything you want to say before we take this into committee?
Just that the wording that says the storage is above the garage, it's rear of the garage, so it's not like on top of the garage. I just want to clarify that.
Okay. So, Madam Deputy Secretary, can we make that change?
Sure, we can amend that.
Okay, thank you. Panel, do you have any comments, or do we have a motion? Larry?
No, just a quick question. I'm looking at the site plan and I noticed that the rear yard is stone patio. And is there a variance for rear yard landscaping? I think there is, isn't there?
Yes, there is.
Is that existing, that stone patio, or is it proposed?
If you can bring my presentation material, I have pictures of everything, and everything is already built. So we're trying to maintain and legalize it. And yes, the patio is all built.
Okay, thanks. It's an existing condition then.
Yes, yes, everything is existing. The only thing that will change is we have to bring everything up to code. So the front yard porch, we agree with the setback being just for the enclosed porch at the front, but obviously the stairs would have to be extended to provide a proper landing to be code compliant. And the rear deck as well needs proper handrails. And those are all, I know they're code related, but it's worth noting.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, panel? Or do we have, is Zahir?
Just a quick one. In the images that you send, is the lawn there artificial or is it natural?
It's artificial.
Thank you.
Okay, panel, any comments? Do we have a motion?
So the question then to the applicant, if the lawn is artificial, is that considered to be hard surface, not part of the landscape, soft landscape? So is the soft landscape variance correct then?
I believe so. And I went by what the survey had said, and it said grass, and I draw the drawings based on that, and then I saw that later on it's artificial, but I don't know if that's considered soft or not.
So in that case, where is your soft landscaping then? You still, in the variance, it's stated you still have 20-something%. Where is it in the?
That's the area of artificial grass.
Where's the soft landscaping then?
That's just the area of artificial grass.
So that is not soft landscaping. That's zero then.
Yeah.
Is it soft landscaping?
you see our question, right? If that is artificial, it's not considered to be soft landscaping. So your variance number 4 should be 0.
I
For the
see.
rear yard.
Well, I'm sure the owner is willing to remove the artificial grass and replace it with natural grass, if that's an issue.
Yeah. Okay, so are there any other questions? We have a motion? Yes, Peter?
Well, I think that if we approve it, then yes, that artificial grass would by right have to be replaced with real grass or some other sort of soft landscaping. So that's the assumption I'm operating on. So in that case, I'm fine with an approval of the application subject to the community planning condition. But I would also like to add a note that just so it doesn't get missed, that the artificial grass in reality be replaced with real soft landscaping.
I think you should make that a condition, not just add a note, Peter.
As a condition. Yes, please.
Yes, it must be a condition, otherwise we'll not get it.
Okay, as a condition.
All right, so do we have, are you seconding it, Yim?
Yes,
with the
with
condition?
those 2 conditions, yes.
Yes, okay. All in favor? Have your approval. Thank you. Number 10, 137 Curzon Street. And the purpose of this application is to convert the existing 2.5-story, 2-unit detached dwelling into a 3-story, 3-unit detached dwelling by constructing a 3rd-story addition, a rear 3rd-story balcony, and a rear basement walkout. And with this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, correspondence and support from 5 properties on Curzon and opposition from 139 Curzon. Mr. Tahari?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to ask staff to put up on the screen. We did receive a planning report late yesterday evening, and planning is imposing 2 conditions.
Okay, so we don't have that material, it's only...
So this is what's up on the screen right now.
Okay, so could you read for all of us what it, well, I'll read it. The owners shall apply for and obtain approval of a rental housing demolition permit under Chapter, I think it's 687 of the Toronto Municipal Code pursuant to Section 111 of the City of Toronto Act prior to demolishing any existing rental dwelling unit at 137 Curzon Street, 1480 and 1488 Dundas Street East, and the owner shall enter into and register on the title any required agreements pursuant to Section 46(9) of the Planning Act, Section 111 of the City of Toronto Act to secure the conditions above to the satisfaction of the Chief Planner and Executive Director, City Planning Division, and the City Solicitor. Mr. Tahari, were you aware of these recommendations?
Hello, Mr. Chairman. Frank Tahari, the architect for 137 Curzon. Yes, we are aware of these conditions, and we've been working with the Open Door staff to create affordable housing in this property and adjacent properties. So if you allow me, I can start my presentation and walk you through it.
Yeah. Well, I don't, I'm not sure we need a presentation, but I think in light of what we just heard, perhaps you can give us a brief presentation.
So I would like to add that Fern Opatovsky from McCarthy is also present on behalf of Percy Ellis. All we're trying to do is essentially to modify an existing three-story detached building into 3 units. As part of that, we are trying to add in an extra 21 square meters on the 3rd floor at the back of the property. We've tried to engage with the community to make sure everybody is in line with what we're trying to do. There has been concerns about previous rentals of this property with Airbnb and some rats and cleaning that needs to be done with the property. That Perseolis has sent a letter to the committee guaranteeing that these will be done, although it's not related to the planning, but they're willing to take that on. There was a concern from a neighbor on the north that there's windows towards their property, which we revised the drawings. We completely eliminated those windows. We were having eaves on the new dormers that are proposed that we completely eliminated those dormers. So there's no more, eliminated those eaves so that there's no more eaves protruding towards their property or the southern portion. If you would like to pull up the letter from the opposition, so we've tried to discuss the project with this neighbor, and we've tried to essentially address most of their comments. I would say everything there is addressed with the exception of the sidewall heights. The sidewall heights have been reviewed by the planning staff, and there has been no major concerns about it. With regards to the character of this building, if you look at the front elevation, we have tried to keep the character of the neighborhood by adding in a sloped roof. Yes, that elevation, sloped roof, the dormer at the front. We're not protruding anything beyond the existing height of the structure. Although we are allowed to go up to 10 meters, we're not doing any of those. We're keeping the exact same height. We're just trying to make the space more useful. I would like to add to this presentation that Perseolis is trying to offer affordable housing in the area. They're working with the property next door, and they're trying to put together about 30% of their units as affordable units to be rented to the public. The final thing that I would like to add is there was a concern about parking spaces at the front. If you pull up the survey, yeah, so this is an existing condition at the front of the property. They bought this property with those pads. They have no problem removing that pad. That's on the city property. They weren't aware until actually today that that pad is owned by the city. So they have no problem removing that. That's the interlock driveway. However, the curb cut is due to the right of way, and that's a legal condition. However, the driveway, they have no problem to remove that. Other than that, I'm here to address any questions, concerns that the committee staff might have.
Thank you. Panel, do you have any questions to hear?
Just with regard to the interlock driveway, that presumably is the one that you're going to be removing whatever was there before and putting in interlock driveway. Is that correct?
No, so there used to be an existing interlock driveway from years ago, and we're open to completely remove that.
And when you remove it, what are you replacing it with?
So that is actually the city property. We can replace landscaping there. That should come, I would say, from the city. It's not inside our property.
Okay.
It's beyond our lot boundaries, essentially.
Thank you. Thank you.
And also, I would like to add that Perseolis is adding a lot of bicycle racks in the property behind, which would be also utilized by this building.
Yes, Peter.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just trying to understand the city comments that, I mean, we just saw them a couple minutes ago for the first time, but my understanding about the rental replacement is when it's 6 or 7 or more rental units that are being lost. But then So if you could just explain that, but I'm also not understanding why the 1480, 1492 Dundas address is being brought up as one of the conditions when we're not considering that. So can you explain
Yes.
that?
So essentially, the properties at the back are also owned by Persealis. They're improving those properties and they're trying to create affordable housing in those properties. Because of the same ownership, the open door planning team has asked us to have this reviewed with them as well, and to expedite the process of the approval and getting occupancy in these buildings. They've essentially instructed us to continue with this application while they do their review.
Okay, so, but are there rental units being lost in these combined applications?
No, actually rental units are being added
Okay, so
in the back.
it's more just that they're kind of formalizing their review
Exactly.
steps. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay,
There's more affordable rental units being added. So 30% of all these 4 buildings are going to be affordable rentals.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.
All right, so any further questions, or do we have comments or a motion? Peter?
I'm happy to bring a motion. I thank the applicant for the clarification on the city planning comments. So I think that the proposal itself is minor. I think the additions to this house are pretty sensitively massed, and I can see no negative impact coming from them. So I move approval subject to the community planning comments, and then also adding a condition that the paved front area in front of the house be, I guess it would be most sensible to say not be used as a parking spot, but to the satisfaction of transportation services, unless any of my colleagues has a different suggestion for that condition.
Well, I thought that usually when you have to restore it. When you're giving up a city parking spot, I think you have to restore it.
Right, but I would just like, I mean, there's not a curb cut for the part that's going to be disused in terms of the parking, the front yard parking. And I would prefer to give the kind of jurisdiction to transportation to services to have it done in whichever way they find most most proper. I'm open to suggestion.
Peter, could you use the word removed? Would that work for you?
Sure.
Yeah, I think that might be it. You're not speculating on what replaced with, but we're basically saying it needs to be removed. I think that might satisfy your concern.
That makes sense.
Okay, so Peter, could you just tell us what the wording of the condition is?
Condition would be that the existing front yard permit parking space be removed.
Thank you. Seconder? Larry, all in favor? Have your approval. Thank you, sir. Number 11, 10 Elm Avenue, and the purpose of this application is to construct a 3-story building, Innovation Center and Studio Theater at the southwest limits of the site fronting Mount Pleasant Road. We have before it material submitted by the applicant only. Ms. Costello.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My last name is Costello. It's Costello, a first initial E for Eileen. I'm counsel for Branksome Hall, who are the applicant and owner in this matter. Sir, my address is at 181 Bay Street, Suite 1800, pursuant to our registration with the committee.
Thank you. So could you tell us, I see we have no opposition because all the listed parties are part of this project, but perhaps you could just tell us what you're doing here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, indeed. I'm joined, I was going to say this morning, but it's the afternoon now. I'm joined by Mr. Burbridge, who is the project architect, as well as Mr. Greenberg, who is our client's planning consultant. If I could ask staff for their assistance to pull up the presentation, which was filed yesterday on March 22nd. It's just a 6-page slide deck, and I think that will let me do this in about 2 minutes for you, Mr. Chairman. If I could have the indulgence of staff. That's it exactly. Thank you very much. So, Mr. Chair, the proposal here is for 4 variances to 2 site-specific zoning bylaws to permit the demolition of the property you see in hatched within the red outline, that being a performing arts center and a decommissioned pool, which is on the east side of the Branksome Hall facility. It's the east side of the campus, which is connected by the pedestrian bridge, which the committee may know as crossing Mount Pleasant Road. And sir, the application seeks permission for a new Innovation and Performing Arts Center, which will take its place. And if I could go to the next slide, B, what I'm going to show you very quickly is this is the site of the existing location. This is the photograph taken from Elm. And the next slide will show you the resulting proposal. And again, if we can go to slide D, this will show you the visual from what I explained was the pedestrian bridge at Mount Pleasant and the resulting proposal on the next slide. So, Mr. Chairman, the variances that are before you are 4. They both relate, sir, to building height and to the built form resulting from the proposal. If we could go to the next slide. What we're showing you here, sir, is the building height for the new proposal. Because there's 2 different site-specific bylaws, there are 2 different height calculations. So we've got a building height here, sir, which is shown as being above the 10.67 meters under the zoning bylaw 2063. And as well, sir, you'll see that we've shown the 4-meter height, which is the height of the mechanical units that we're also seeking approval for. And you see that dimension right at the top of the roof. So as a consequence, Mr. Chair, of the 2 variances, you have 2 height variances to the 2 bylaws. If we can go to the next slide, I'll show you very quickly the second change, which is to the building envelope. On my left-hand side, your left-hand side, is the original Plan 2B to the zoning bylaw 640/2002. That was a zoning bylaw that was done, Mr. Chair, and to members of the committee for a master planning exercise for Branksome Hall back in 2000. What you'll see, sir, is that there's indications in heavy outline for where there can be building additions. That's the original on the left-hand side, sir, which showed a 4.5 meter addition to the existing pool structure. On the right-hand side, you'll see the new building envelope, which represents the demolition of the previous structure and pool facility and the new addition. Because, Mr. Chairman, that is coming into an area which was contemplated only for a height of 4.5. You see our height variance of 15.5 shown on revised Plan 2B. The last variance, Mr. Chair, is with respect to the minimum distance between the building envelopes. And if we could just stay, I apologize to staff, if we could just go back to that previous slide. Thank you, to slide G. I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you so much for doing that electronically and remotely. You'll see, Mr. Chair, in revised Plan 2B, the new addition of the building comes down beside the existing heritage homes on Elm Avenue. And so the distance is now going to be 1.5 meters between the facing distance of the walls, whereas it was required under the bylaw to be 15.24. I should note for the committee, this has been extensively reviewed by City of Toronto staff. We're on our 4th site plan resubmission. It's also been reviewed by Heritage Preservation Services staff. And so this is very much being treated as a technical built form variance and does not raise any concerns, either from a fire separation or heritage conservation perspective. So if we could just go to the last slide then, with my thanks to committee staff, that'll just show you the resulting proposal. You'll have on your file a letter from SVN, Mr. Greenberg, the professional planning consultant for our client, who's given you a full opinion with respect to the 4 tests, and I'd commend that to the committee. And I also wanted to note, Mr. Chair, that Perhaps one of the reasons that there's no letters of opposition is that Branksome undertook an extensive public outreach process, including holding 2 open houses prior to the notice being issued for this application, and made sure to share all of these documentations with our neighbors in advance. And so I'd commend my client for that good work. So with that, sir, I'm mindful that you've had a long morning already. I'm going to stop and just pause and see if there's any questions through you of the committee. Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to ask, as I understand it, all those buildings on the East Campus are owned by Branksome Hall?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. The entirety of those buildings that you see in 2B are owned by Branksome Hall, and that's why they're all included in the zoning envelope, because that was part of the master plan exercise that was undertaken.
So there's no impact essentially on any other neighbor or any other dwelling?
No, all of the immediately adjacent buildings, Mr. Chair, are Branksome buildings, as you've noted, notwithstanding that Branksome did undertake an outreach program to South Rosedale community through the South Rosedale Residents Association, as well as members of the school community.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Do you have any questions, panel? No? Okay, we'll take it into committee. Do we have any comments, or do we have a motion? Yim?
Oh, yeah, that was a very good presentation. I think I don't have any problem with this application, since they're going through extensive review of the city on the other planning issues. So I will move for approval. I don't think there's any conditions, no conditions.
No conditions. Do we have a seconder? Peter, all in favor? You have your approval. Thank you. Next application, number 12. 218 and 220 Dundas Street West. The purpose of the application to alter the proposed 3-story mixed-use building from the original building permit by converting a portion of the ground floor commercial space into 2 residential dwelling units. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, a report from community planning, and opposition from 150 Vine Avenue. And we have Ms. Evangelista. Are you here?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members. Ida Evangelista, 53 Bentworth Avenue, Toronto, here on behalf of the owners of 3018 and 20 Dundas West.
Yeah, doesn't look like we're going to need a presentation from you. Do you have anything to say before we take it into committee?
Mr. Chair, what we are asking for is, standard in this now area that's becoming once again vibrant. We're proposing live work. Planning is in support of our proposal. And I believe the application speaks for itself. It's the only variance that we have. And with this, I believe and respectfully submit it meets the 4 tests.
All right, thank you. Panel, any questions, comments, or do we have a motion?
So sorry, Chair, just a quick question. I wasn't exactly sure when I reviewed this one about the mix of commercial and res. So just confirming that ground floor facing Dundas is going to be kept as commercial or retail?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, Member Clay, the front portion will continue to be commercial, and the 2 residential units will be in the back.
Okay, good, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Do we have a motion? Peter?
Yeah, I think this is a very straightforward variance being requested, and I think it's positive to add more residential units into a busy Main Street area. And I think Larry's point about keeping commercial frontage, I think that's a very good one and worth raising. So thanks, Larry, for that. I can see no negative impacts. I move approval of this application subject to community planning conditions about substantially in accordance with.
All right, thank you. We have a seconder, Larry. All in favor? You have your approval, thank you. Number 1349 Camberwell Road. The purpose of this application is to construct a rear one-story ancillary structure, shed and toilet room with an open canopy structure above the deck and to construct interior alterations. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant and 4 form letters in support. Mr. Livings.
Mark?
Hello. Jordan Livings, you've been unmuted. Jordan Livings, can you hear me? All right, Jordan, we can't hear you, so I'm going to give you a call on the number you registered with.
At the tone, please record your message. When you are finished recording.
It didn't work.
Okay, so maybe we'll move on. Jacob?
Jordan Livings, can you hear me? Okay, we do have the next speaker available. I can send an email to Jordan.
All right, so number 14, 355 Clinton Street. Purpose of the application is to alter the existing 2.5-story semi-detached dwelling by constructing a 1-story rear addition, a rear deck, and a rear 2nd-story rooftop deck. Also to construct a 1-story ancillary building, detached garage in the rear yard abutting the laneway. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, a report from planning, and support from 340 and 349 Clinton Street. Craig Reitz.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for your time today. My name is Craig Ritz at CAR Design Studio, agent for the owners. I'm located at 53 Chauncey Avenue.
Okay, sir. We have a brief, there's, looks like quite a few variances. Can we have a brief description of what your client's doing here?
Yeah, so as you'll see on the file, we made revisions to our initial submission based on correspondence that we'd had with community planning with respect to their concerns on the percentage of soft landscaping that we initially proposed. As outlined in the memo submitted to the committee summarizing the changes, the revisions we made were the removal of hardscape walkway initially proposed in the rear yard from the deck to the garage, as well as a small covered area off of the garage.
Okay, Mr. Reitz, does this affect variances?
The changes, the concern was related to percentage of soft landscaping. So the changes that we made with respect to that increased the proposed soft landscaping from the initial 21.14% to now 38.5%.
So that's variance number 5?
That's correct.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if we could go one by one. I believe
Yes.
variance number 1 and 2 have been removed.
Okay, so Mr. Reitz,
That's correct.
can you confirm 1 and 2 have been deleted?
Yeah, so as part of the changes we made related to soft yard landscaping, one of those was keeping the existing deck in the rear yard to remain versus a new larger deck we had previously proposed. So as well as adding additional soft landscaping, maintaining the existing rear deck, eliminated variances 1 and 2, which were related to side yard setback and height of the proposed deck.
All right, so are 3 and 4 affected in any way?
Sorry, in what regard, Mr. Chair?
Are there any changes to variance 3 and 4?
Variance 4 in the change to the deck, we actually had a stair at one point that went from the proposed ground floor deck to the deck that's still proposed in the second level. There was a small storage area that's in review.
Just a minute.
Added.
Just a minute. Variance number 4 relates to floor space index.
That's correct.
So is
So
that
it was just
affected?
reduced sorry, Mr. Chair.
Is
Go
that
ahead.
changed in any way?
Our revisions just reduced it from 92%, now requesting an FSI of 90%.
90%? And what is the area?
As proposed, it's very much in keeping with the existing context of the neighborhood going back a couple of years.
The area of the lot was you were asking for 198.73 square meters. You're now asking for 90 times the area of the lot. What are the square meters that you're asking for?
The reduction is from is now 195.81 square meters.
Okay.
Yeah.
And tell us, the soft landscaping was 20, you were asking for, you had 21.14%, 25.28 square meters. What is it now?
We're now requesting 38.5%, which is 43.63 square meters. And this was accepted as per the staff report. They deemed it acceptable based on the revisions that we've made.
Okay, is there any change to number 6?
No, there is not.
Okay, those are all the changes then.
That's correct.
All right, thank you. Panel, do you have any questions? Okay, let's take it into committee. Any comments, or do we have a motion? Peter?
Thanks, Chair. I think that the revisions to the application have made it a good one, and I think it's defensible. I think the variances now are minor, and I think that with community planning support, it's supportable. So I would move approval of the application as amended, subject to community planning conditions.
All right, do we have a seconder? Here, all in favor? Have your approval, sir. Thank you. Jacob, have you found Mr. Livings?
Been no response yet, but let's just give this
Okay,
another
so
try quickly.
we'll keep going.
Yeah, actually, he or she has left, so next item if you like.
Yep. Number 108 Binswood Avenue. And the purpose of this application is to alter the existing 1.5-story detached dwelling by constructing a complete second-story addition with a new front porch, a second-story balcony, and a rear deck. Also to construct a 2-story south side addition with an integral garage. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, a report from Urban Forestry, and 5 form letters in support. Mr. Milzen?
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Peter Milchin, MILCZYN of PM Strategies, 296 Mill Road, Suite PH5 in Toronto. I'm an agent for the applicant. Very briefly, Mr. Chair, you noted what the proposal is. There are 3 variances. The first is for the floor space index, the second for the side yard setback on the south side, and the third for a reduction in the front yard landscaping. We believe that this meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act. The variances are minor. In the first case, the FSI It is in excess of the bylaw, but the building is substantially to be built within the allowed footprint of the site in accordance with the bylaw. The side yard setback on the south side is to allow for an extension of the existing house with construction of a two-story addition, garage on the ground floor, and a bedroom on the second floor. That addition will be set well back from the front of the house, and the abutting house at 106 Binswood has a blank wall on that side of the house. There are no openings, no windows, no doors. So the reduction in side yard setback, I believe, has no impact on the abutting neighbor. And the front yard landscaping reduction is due to an increased size of a new front porch. The existing home has a small wooden stair leading to the front door. The front wall of the building will not be moved forward in any way, so it's in line with the existing front wall. There will simply be a new concrete front porch at the front door, and that causes a slight reduction in the soft landscaping in the front yard.
All right, thank you, sir. Any questions, panel? Do we have any comments, or do we have a motion? Yim?
Yes, I agree with the applicant. I look at the three variants, they are all minor, and I do not believe it will have any negative impact in the neighborhood. I move for approval, subject to forestry condition number 1.
We have a seconder. Sahir, all in favor? You have your approval, sir. Thank you. Number 16, 674 Manning Avenue. And the purpose of this application is to construct a new 3-story duplex with a front porch, a front second-story balcony, a front third-story balcony, and a rear basement walkout, also to permit 3 parking spaces in the rear yard abutting the laneway. With this application, you have material submitted by the applicant, a report from Urban Forestry, and opposition from 676 Manning Avenue. Carmenita Martin, please.
Hi, can you hear me? Good day, Mr. Chair and members of the committee.
Yes, we can hear you. Can we have your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, my last name is Martin, M-A-R-T-I-N. My first name is Carmenita, and my address is 674 Manning Avenue.
Okay. Can you go ahead and just give us your a brief presentation?
Okay, great. My proposal is to demolish the existing 2-story detached house, which has considerable settling due to its age and constant vibration from the subway system, and erect a 3-story duplex with a second and a third floor recessed balcony, basement walkout, actually 2 parking spots. I have amended the application from 3 to 2 based on a recommendation from community planning. And initially I started with 8 variances. I am now down to 7 with once I reduced from 3 to 2, and the other 2 parking spots were brought into compliance.
All right, just a minute, Ms. Martin. Could you tell us which variances have been either deleted or varied?
Okay, so number 8 was deleted, variance 8. And by deleting variance 8, number 6 was amended from 28.5 meters square to 34.5, and that would be for the rear backyard soft landscape.
And what is the percentage now?
34.5% as opposed to 28.
All right, thank you. thank you. Any other changes?
No, that's it.
Okay.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of application will have to be amended. The last sentence, also to permit, would it be 2 parking spaces in the rear yard abutting the laneway instead of 3?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Martin, do you have anything more to say?
I submitted supporting documentation. I'm not sure if you'd like me to go through the variances and just expand on what I have.
Well, perhaps you could do it. You have some opposition, so.
All right,
you're
not
going
a
to get
problem.
you're going to get an opportunity to respond to them, but you might want to just briefly outline some of the variances.
Okay, all right. The requested variances, so the property is zoned for a height of 10 meters. I'm proposing 9.9. The frontage is narrow, 7.04 meters. All one has to do is to drive down the street, and basically what you'll see is the houses are there are some 2 stories. Most of the homes are between 2.5 and 3 stories tall on narrow lots. The height provides additional floor space to compensate or offset the narrow lot. What I've done, because I do realize that it's 9.9 meters, there's no rear balcony, 3rd floor balcony or deck overlooking my neighbors to the south and the north. And the number of windows on the north side are limited to only the bathroom and the bedroom, which I cannot have a bedroom without a bathroom because it's against the building code. For the bedrooms at the rear of the house, have no sidewall windows, thereby giving privacy to my neighbors on both sides. Community planning has reviewed, and they had no issue with the height. Their only issue was with the soft yard landscape, which was adjusted by reducing the number of parking spots. The depth of 17 meters, which I'm requesting, is not excessive. It is what the zoning bylaw permits, and is triggered only because I'm requesting to build a duplex. A quick Google Earth search using their measurement device shows that the updated homes or the newer homes are 17 meters or more. And again, this helps to compensate for the narrow lot. Additional does help to accommodate for the stairs inside the building. I'm requesting an FSI of 1.13, which again, that is just to accommodate for the narrow lot and to offset, to offset the narrow lot and to provide functional living space for 2 families, which is not uncommon in the neighborhood.
All right, Ms. Martin, your time is up. Perhaps you could wrap up.
Okay, so I have made, I have tried to design the house, taking my neighbors into consideration with the providing privacy for the backyard. And that is what I have to say.
All right, thank you. Quinn Cow.
So this particular speaker did not respond to calls to join the hearing, so the next speaker would be Michael Formusa.
All right.
I'm right here, guys.
All right, okay.
I'm right here. Wait.
All right, let us have your name and your address, please.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. My name is Michael Formusa. I live at 676 Manning Avenue. I'm the resident and owner. Thank you for taking the time today to hear my concerns regarding the proposed variances. I'll try to make it brief. I'm concerned about the height, I'm concerned about the depth, and I'm concerned about the overall floor area. 1.13 against a 0.6. It's an 88% increase. The effect this will have on my back rear garden, I grow fruits and vegetables back there. There will be an obstruction of sunlight. I'm concerned about the encroachment to the south border of my property as well. And I'd like a clarification as well. You know, I did hear the applicant say they were the residents of 674, which I do not believe to be the case. So I'd like a clarification on that as well, please. It's too big. Like I think this is significant. I am really in favor of improving that property, but I do think that there's some common ground that can be found. I did hear the applicant state that they're trying to take in consideration my rear garden and my back. I did approach them over a year ago when I saw a contractor inspecting the house with my contact information. Hoping to work toward common ground. That didn't happen. The first I heard from them was on March 14th when they asked me to sign a letter of support. So in regard to consideration being taken, I strenuously disagree with that assertion. Again, there can be common ground found here. I don't believe that 1.13 against 0.6 is reasonable. Thank you for hearing my concerns.
All right.
And that's all for me.
Thank you. Panel, any questions? Ms. Martin? Yeah, Yim, sorry.
Yes, I have a question to the applicant, Ms. Martin. Yeah.
Oh, to the applicant?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me get her back and let her make her pitch, and then you can ask her a question.
Okay.
Ms. Martin?
Yes, sir.
Yes, so Mr. Formusa says it's too big, too high, and he doesn't like it. So what do you have to say?
Okay, so in terms of the height, under bylaw 569/2013, the height of 10 meters, if you look, I do have some pictures in my supporting statement. That height is very common. That is the norm for the neighborhood.
So
For a residential home.
right.
I still missed it.
We're having trouble. You're fading in and out.
That is correct.
No.
I met with Mr. Formusa and I discussed the
We're having.
Yeah.
Are you there, Miss Martin?
for approximately 7 to.
Yeah. Miss Martin, we can't
Yes, I
hear you.
am.
Hello? Miss Martin, we can't hear you.
Hello?
You're fading in and out. So we heard you.
Okay, I am here.
We heard you before. Is there something you're doing different now?
I am not doing anything different. I'm in the same position and I have not moved my computer.
Okay, we can hear you now. So,
Okay. So I went and met with Mr. Formusa. I went in his home. I spoke with him for about 7 to 10 minutes, discussing the variances and why they were required. The variance I'm requesting of 17 meters, that is standard in terms for a residential home. It's triggered because it is a duplex. The height is what is common within the neighborhood, along the street. They're all between 2.5 and 3 stories. That is not uncommon. And yes, I have, contrary to what he believes, I have taken him into consideration. I did not put the balconies, initially, it was to put the balconies at the back of the house. I have moved the balconies to the front just to give him privacy as well as the neighbor on the south privacy, as opposed to be overlooking his backyard. And that's what I have to say.
okay, Yim, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Can the staff bring up the forestry staff report, second page? And yeah, second page. This the my question is, they recommend that you you have shift your stair, the front porch stair, so that it's away from the big tree. Has this been done? Because I cannot see on the plan that this has been done.
Right. Okay. So I have discussed with forestry length. I have agreed to move the stairs closer to the south side in order to protect the tree. I spoke with Mr. Matei last week, and we had a very good discussion. And yes, I am in agreement to moving the stairs.
Yeah, but the revision is not shown on the drawings, right? Because I cannot find it.
That is correct. Not,
okay.
But I will be submitting new drawings with that revision. And it will be as well on the updated tree, the plan for the tree.
Mm-hmm. So do you know how much you're going to move away from the tree, from the current position?
I will be moving it. I don't know exactly how much, but what he said was whatever I can move, that would be very helpful. As close as possible to the existing steps was what he suggested.
So this is ongoing discussion, right? Okay.
Yes, it is. Absolutely ongoing.
Okay.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, I'd feel uncomfortable of having a condition revising the site plan when the committee members haven't had a chance to review it, especially because measurements haven't been provided to us.
That's my concern too, because looking through the drawings, it does not show that the stairs has been moved.
Okay, so yes, you are right. I am totally in agreement to working with urban forestry. And as they said, they have no issues with approving the application or with the committee approving the application. And I am willing, absolutely flexible. I do have an arborist that I am working with. And I am definitely willing to work to protect the tree. I have owned this property for 12 years. The tree is beautiful, it is thriving, and I will not do anything to harm it.
Perhaps the committee could consider a condition to the satisfaction of urban forestry?
Yes.
Yeah.
That would be fine with me, thank you.
All right, so Yim, did you want to make a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make the motion, and I look at the, I think it is actually to add another residential unit. I think it's a good idea, and the massing and the height, and I think it's compatible in the area, and I'm in support of it with the condition that they will what do you call that, comply with the forestry advisory comments. Yeah.
All right, Sahir, you second the motion?
No, Mr. Chair, I just have a comment or concern that hopefully I can get answered before. I'm willing to support. Just in the back of the property, there are 3 parking stalls that are indicated. I have no idea what sort of surface we're going to see there. I would like to propose that the parking stall area be that permeable paving be utilized in that space as a condition as well.
Yim?
I agree, yeah, okay.
Okay, so that's a condition of your motion?
Yes.
Okay, Peter?
Thanks, Chair. Just before the vote, I wouldn't mind saying I have some concerns with this application. I think there are many 2.5, 3-story houses on this street and that do go deep, but my main concern is the depth of this house, and it's 3 stories the entire way back. I think the established pattern is having a 3-story bulk at the front and then stepping down to 2 stories or 1 story. So I actually think that the massing of this building is not sensitive to its neighbors, and it goes back too far and is too monolithic. So I'm not going to be supporting it.
Okay, do we have a seconder for Yim's motion? Larry? You second the motion? Okay, all right, so we have a motion to approve the application subject to conditions. All in favor? All right, and Peter, you dissent? Okay, so the motion passes 4-1. Ms. Martin, you have your approval. Number 17, 16,
Through you, Mr.
60,
Chair.
pardon?
Sorry to interrupt. I think we have Jordan Livings ready for item 13. Thank you.
13? Okay, let's go back there. I got to find it.
Mr. Livings or Mrs. Livings?
Hello, good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Can you hear me?
Yes, could you just hang on while I introduce the property and then we'll come back to you?
Yes, of course.
The purpose of the application is to construct a rear one-story ancillary structure, shed and toilet room, and an open canopy structure above the deck, and to construct interior alterations. And now I've lost my, I don't know what material, but I think I put it into the record previously. Ms. Deputy Secretary Treasurer, is that okay? You can refer back to what
Yes.
I read into the record before?
Yes, that is correct.
So, yes, can you go ahead then? Can you give us your name and your address, please?
Yes, my name is Jordan Livings from Eisen Architecture, and I am the agent for the owner of 49 Camberwell Road. My address is 91 Tychos Drive, and I also just want to give my sincere apologies for the delay. I was experiencing some major technical difficulties.
Oh, okay. Well, we know about that. Yeah, okay. So I don't think we need a presentation. We're going to take it into committee. Do you have anything to say before we take it into committee?
I just want to say that if the proposed shed was not connected to the open air canopy with one column, then we wouldn't require any of these variances. We do believe that this proposal is super minor in nature and meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Is that here?
Just a quick question. I'm looking at, sorry, just trying to get to which document. This is A1.0. I was just wondering, you've got a new concrete driveway to replace an existing one. Yeah, what would be the opportunity in this case, or would there be an opportunity in this case to turn that into some form of permeable? I know there's permeable concrete, or alternately permeable pavers of some sort.
Is that required, or?
I think it would just look very good and certainly assist with drainage issues that we're going to be facing, if not already facing. Would you or your client be amenable to that?
Ms. Livings?
Sorry. No, I think we would prefer to keep it a concrete driveway if possible.
Okay. Any other questions, panel? Any comments? Do we have a motion? Larry? You're muted, Larry.
I'm getting, anyways, I understand what Sahir's point is, and it would be actually preferable if we could do that. I don't think there's a variance in front of us with respect to the front yard, which is, I think, kind of hamstrings us. It would be, I think, just to the applicant, given the runoff issues that we're experiencing across the city, the committee is trying to take advantage of those situations where we can introduce measures which reduce the runoff wherever we can. And putting permeable paving in instead of concrete would do that. But given that that's not before us, I don't think we can impose that kind of a condition. So I'll just move approval of this application. It is really minor, the variances that were being requested. So I think it's a fairly straightforward application. So I'll move approval, no conditions.
Peter, you second that motion? All in favor? You have your approval. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so we go back to number 17. "60 Ferrier Avenue, purpose of the application to alter the existing 2.5-story detached dwelling by constructing a front covered porch." And with this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, and one letter in support and 11 form letters in support, all from properties on Ferrier Avenue. So where are we? Yes. Mr. Keir.
Here?
Yes.
Hello, I'm Trevor Keir, 510 Jarvis Street. I'm the agent for the owner of 60 Ferrier.
Okay, so this does not look like a application for which we need a presentation. Mr. Kerr, do you have anything to say before I take it into committee?
No, just to add that we have that letter from Metrolinx saying that there's no corridor development permit permitted, and we have an arborist report saying there's no tree injury, so we're hoping that there won't be an urban forestry condition.
Thank you. Panel, do you have any questions? Any comments, or do we have a motion? Zahir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This indeed is a very, very straightforward application. There are no conditions attached. I'd be happy to move motion to approve.
All right, do we have a seconder? Yim, all in favor? Have your approval, sir. Thank you. Number 18, 12 Aldridge Avenue. And the purpose of this application is to alter the existing 2-story semi-detached dwelling by constructing a 3rd-story addition, a front 1-story addition, a side 2nd and 3rd-story cantilevered addition, and a rear 3-story addition. Also to construct a 1-story ancillary building, detached garage, in the rear yard abutting the laneway. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, email correspondence from planning, and a report from planning, opposition from 24, 26, and 22 Murdoch Avenue. Jacob Kachuba.
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. So can we have your name and your address, please?
Yes. So my name is Jacob Kachuba. I am with Tignum Design and Engineering. Our office is in Mississauga at 1515 Matheson Boulevard East, Unit C10.
Okay, so Mr. Kachuba, I don't think we need a presentation. Seems relatively straightforward. Do you have anything to say before I take it into committee?
Yes, I would. I just want to reiterate that we did work with community planning quite extensively and the neighbors to reduce the project so that it was more in line with the comments coming from the neighbors in community planning.
Right.
Through you, Mr. Chair, can we just get Jacob to go through the revisions to the variances? I believe, oh, maybe I'm looking, no. I think there's 2 revisions, one for variance number 2.
And one for number 3.
Yes.
Okay, so could you just tell us what the changes are?
Yes, so these are in relation to the main dwelling. the concerns from neighbors and community planning was that they just felt that the project was too big. And so we reduced the FSI from 1.18 to 1. So that's in regards to variance number 2.
So what is this area, the square meters?
If you look at the waiver that I sent, just give me a second, I'll bring it up. It is now 149.9 meters.
Thank you. And the other change?
So in reducing the size of the project, we also reduced the cantilever portion. So that reduced the side yard setback. So we reduced it from 0.27 meters to 0.62 meters, as noted on the waiver.
Okay, thank you. No other changes?
No.
Okay, thank you. Larry?
Just a quick question to the applicant. I'm assuming since you've spoken with many neighbors and made modifications, you are a semi. Have you had discussions with the owner of the adjacent semi?
Absolutely. They actually had quite a bit to say, and that was one of the main reasons of reducing the size. A lot of their concerns were regarding the actual construction because there's a shared chimney and what's going to happen because he recently put a roof on. So we addressed his concerns. And at the end of the conversation, he said, "Oh, thank you for informing me." He did have concerns even from the front streetscape. And so if you look at like drawing A117, we just tried to make sure that the front streetscape was maintained. So from that perspective, yes, we did have extensive consultations with the neighbor.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, comments, or do we have a motion? Yes, Sahir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd be glad to move a motion to approve the application. I don't believe there are any concerns or conditions from any department. So there are no conditions attached to this except for the revisions. So based on revised variances or as amended.
Right. Do we have a seconder? Yim?
Could I just add something, please, Chair?
Yes.
I think in the community planning comments, those reflect the amended variances, but they also requested that variance 2 be substantially in accordance with plans. If we could add that as a condition?
Yes.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, Yim, you second that? Okay. All in favor? You have your approval, sir. Thank you. Number 19, 42 Indian Trail. The purpose of this application is to alter the existing 3-story detached dwelling by constructing a rear 3-story addition with a walkout terrace. With this application, we have material submitted by the applicant, correspondence from Urban Forestry, 10 signature petition in support and opposition from 44 and 36 Indian Trail. Mr. Engelman.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chair and fellow committee members. David Eagleman, 900 the East Mall, Suite 300, and I am the agent on behalf of the owner.
Now you have some opposition, so perhaps we could have a presentation.
Yes, so through you, Mr. Chair, before getting into the variances, I would like to note that we have consulted with planning staff regarding this application, and they have expressed that they have no concerns or objections with the proposal. Additionally, we have consulted with surrounding neighbors regarding this proposal, and a number of neighbors have provided signatures in support of the application, including the immediately adjacent neighbor at 40 Indian Trail. Regarding the variances, I would like to note that a number of the variances we are requesting today are a result of the fact that this proposal is for an addition to an existing building, and because the proposed addition will align with the existing side exterior main walls. Variance number 1 pertains to the proposed third-story terrace side yard setback. This variance is required due to the fact that the proposed addition and third-story terrace align with the existing side exterior main walls of the dwelling. The dwelling itself is compliant with side yard setback requirements because it is legally existing, and the proposed third-story terrace is in an as-of-right size and is in an as-of-right location. Moreover, if the committee could just turn to my submitted neighborhood photos. It should be within the package. Anyhow, I'll note that photo number 9, number 10, and number 11 of my submitted photo study demonstrate that third-story terraces are an existing and common condition within the neighborhood. Variance number 2 pertains to the proposed FSI. The additional massing proposed will be distributed over 3 floors, and the resulting dwelling will be in keeping with the existing character of the neighborhood. From the street, the proposed dwelling will be perceived to be identical to what is currently existing on the subject property. The proposed FSI will result in an increase of only 0.17 times the lot area, or 58.5 square meters of additional floor space over what is permitted as of right. The existing sloped roof design is being maintained through this proposal, and there are no windows proposed on the rear addition. Additionally, the proposal is compliant with side, front, and rear yard setback requirements, maximum building length, maximum building depth, as well as the maximum building height and side exterior main wall height, which demonstrates that the proposed massing will be in keeping with the existing character of the neighborhood. Proposed FSI is also in keeping with a number of recent approvals, such as 23 Indian Trail, approved at 0.94 times the lot area, 54 Indian Trail, approved at 1.07 times the lot area, and 57 Indian Trail, approved at 1.01 times the lot area. Variance number 3 pertains to the proposed decorative column on the rear main wall. This variance is another variance that is required because the proposed addition will align with the existing side exterior main walls of the dwelling. As demonstrated in a number of photos within my submitted neighborhood photo study, dwellings in this area are characterized by little to no side yard setbacks, at least on one side of a dwelling. The proposed rear addition and decorative column on the rear main wall will maintain the existing west side yard setback condition on the subject property and will therefore have little to no impact further than what currently exists. Variance number 4 pertains to the proposed roof eave setback. Once again, this variance is required because the proposed addition will align with the existing side exterior main walls of the dwelling. As I've mentioned, this is a common condition within the neighborhood, and the proposed roof eaves on the addition will maintain the existing roof eave setback condition on the subject property. Variance number 5 pertains to the proposed rear yard soft landscaping. The proposed rear yard soft landscaping will be an improvement to the existing rear yard soft landscaping condition. Currently, only 11.76% of the rear yard is soft landscaping, and we are proposing to increase that by 16.24%, which will result in the total proposed rear yard soft landscaping of 28%. Based on the provided justification, I'm of the opinion that this proposal fits in with both the existing and planned context for the neighborhood, is consistent with the redevelopment trends along Indian Trail and the broader neighborhood context, and for these reasons, I believe this application represents good planning and meets the 4 tests under Section 45(1) of the Planning Act. I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
All right, panel, any questions? No. Chris Brajak?
Hello, this is Chris Brajak. I am at 44 Indian Trail, and I just have a small issue with the variances. First off, I'd like to point out, just so the committee is aware, this diagram that's showing right now is a little incorrect. I just want you to understand where I actually am. Where it's labeled 40 Indian Trail, that's actually me at 44 Indian Trail. And the other one's at 40 Indian Trails on the other side. That's important to understand because of this setback in my building. If you can go to photo 2 in what was provided, there we go. as you can see, there's a window on that part of my building. My building is the light brown one. There's a window there and on the first floor that provides light into a bedroom and my dining room. You can't see the bottom one because of the fence, obviously. What's being proposed is that building will come out. As far as mine is, of course, my addition is set back 5 feet from the property line. They're proposing that that comes out even to where you can see my eaves in that picture. That creates a bit of an alleyway and takes away all the sunlight from that area. Other than that, I don't have an issue. What I was asking our neighbor to do is to do what we did and bring it back to 5 feet from the property line on the addition. Other than that, I don't have any issues with anything that they're doing. I think the house needs work and it'll benefit the neighborhood if it gets done. And that's all I have today. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Panel, any questions? Nope. Karen Breyer?
Karen Breyer did not respond to calls to join the hearing, and she's not here at the moment.
Okay. Mr. Engelmann?
Yes, so through you, Mr. Chair, to address the first comment, it may have just been a slight error in identifying the addresses of the adjacent properties on the site plan. However, that is, more of just a wording error, not really anything to do with the variances. In regards to Mr. Brejac's concern about removing sunlight, we are compliant with side yard setback. So the only setback variance is pertaining to the 3rd-story terrace. So this addition is in an as-of-right location in relation to the side lot line. So the west side lot line. So through you, Mr. Chair, I believe that the application meets the 4 tests and is appropriate for the development of the subject property.
All right, panel, any questions, comments? Okay. All right, do we have a motion? Peter?
Thanks, Chair. I think the variances that are being proposed are minor, and I think that this is a reasonably sensitive project to add a bit of GFA to a building. I think it does respect the pattern of depth in the neighborhood, and I think it's supportable. So I move approval of the application with no conditions.
We have a seconder, Sahir. All in favor? You have your approval, sir. Thank you. Number 20, 29 Dingwall Avenue. The purpose of this application to alter the existing 2.5-story detached dwelling by constructing a 3-story rear addition and a ground floor rear deck. With this application, we have materials submitted by the applicant, reports from urban forestry and community planning. Farzam.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. And this variances number 1 and 2 are eliminated from our request.
Okay.
We have already reduced the main walls.
Mr. Farzam, could you slow down?
Yeah.
1 and 2, variances 1 and 2 are deleted?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Next.
We are proposing basically about like a 48 square foot addition on the 3rd floor, converting the existing 2.5-story building to a 3-story house. We do also have an addition at the back, 3-story addition at the back of the house. We have reduced the floor space index that we have provided you initially from 1.06 to 0.98 on the revised drawings that were submitted on on Monday. And with respect to the setbacks, we are
Mr.
basically,
Farzam, so
yes.
you reduce that, and what is this square meters?
And square meters is right. If your colleagues could open up the site plan, please. It is right now 205.3 meters squared.
No, 205?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So any changes to variances number 4 and 5?
No, we have kept the existing, we are proposing to keep the existing variances intact. Basically, the addition will be aligned with the existing building of the building. And we are just adding about 1.5 meters from on the east side and 3 meters from the other side.
Okay.
This is the older one. There's a new one that was submitted on Monday as a late submission.
Panel, do you have any questions? Okay.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, can we confirm then for variance, the height variance, variance number 5, the required
Yes.
is 10 meters,
There
the
are
altered
two
dwelling will
variants.
have a height of 10.75 meters? Is that correct, or is it going to 10.6 meters?
There are two bylaws that are affecting on this property. 569/2013. Based on that, our building height is measured 9.7 meters, which is less than 10 meters. The older bylaw, 86 bylaw, that accounts for the average of the grades from front and back, which increases the building height to 10.6 meters. We would like to propose, if with your permission, to go ahead with the 2013 version, which is the latest bylaw.
No, but we have to deal with.
And we are keeping basically, we are not increasing the roof height. The existing roof height, we are still within exactly where the existing roof height is, with the old or new bylaw, basically, which is 9.7 meters.
So are you requesting 10.75 meters for height?
No, 10.6 meters, that's the old bylaw, right? So, new bylaw, we are 9.7 meters, which is less than 10 meters height, and it's an existing building height.
Mr. Farzam, you have to comply with
Yes.
both bylaws. So
Yeah.
the old bylaw requires 10 meters. You're asking for 10.75 meters. Are you still asking for 10.75? Or are you asking for 10.6?
No, we are not. We reduced it to 10.6,
All right,
which is an
thank you.
existing building
All right,
height.
thank you.
Okay, so then it's on record then that variance number 1 and 2 are removed, variance number 3 has been amended, as well as variance number 5.
That's correct. Is that correct, sir? Mr. Farzam?
Yes, that is correct. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, panel, do you have any questions? All right, do we have Larry?
Yeah, sure. I'll take this one. I think with the changes that the applicant has agreed to, and with the support now of planning staff, I think this is a supportable application. It fits well in within, I think, the neighborhood. And I'm happy to move approval of this application, subject to approval of this amended application with the amended variances, subject to forestry number 2.
All right, thank you. Yim, you second that? Okay, all in favor? You have your approval, sir. Thank you. That is the morning list. It is now 2:24 p.m.
Through you, Mr. Chair, staff have agreed to take a 45-minute break instead of a full hour, so that we
Okay.
can start the next session
We will
earlier than later.
return in 45 minutes.